the only debate between Harris and Trump. Our show starts with you and your post-debate analysis. Do you think either candidate managed to move the needle? We do. Were you happy with the fact checks and partially muted mics from debate moderators? And importantly, you feel better about the race now than you did 24 hours ago. After we hear from you, we'll turn to media maven and local woman NBC 10 Sue O'Connell. She'll give her thoughts on the debate and subsequent endorsements from Taylor Swift, the real one, not the AI image. This time, we'll also ask Sue about those absurd and degrading claims from the radical right about immigrants coming for your pets. It's all ahead on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corby Kummer. Remembrance ceremonies are underway on this 23rd anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. That's when al-Qaeda terrorists hijacked 4 commercial planes filled with passengers and attacked the United States. Nearly 3,000 people were killed. The first ceremony began this morning in New York City, where a bell tolled to honor the moments when the first 2 planes flew into the 2 towers of the World Trade Center. Another ceremony is being held at the Pentagon. Mourners are reading the names of the people who were killed there.
Sharon A. Carver. William E. Caswell.
And there's another ceremony in Shanksville, Pennsylvania today. The passengers aboard Flight 93 moved to overpower their hijackers. The terrorists crashed their plane into a huge Pennsylvania field. It's believed they intended to attack the U.S. Capitol. Former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris met last night for their first and possibly only presidential debate. Harris repeatedly put Trump on the defensive. NPR's Franco Ordonez reports Harris baited Trump into giving angry and rambling responses.
Former President Donald Trump played defense for much of the more than 90-minute debate. He responded to attacks on his legal problems, the January 6 attacks, and his own former officials failing to back him in his efforts to return to the White House. Trump sought to tie Harris to President Biden's policy record.
She doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences. Like run, spot, run.
He argued that she had 3 years to implement the changes she's proposing now. Franco Ordonez, NPR News.
Consumer prices in August were up 2.5% on an annual basis. That's according to the Labor Department this morning. Those prices are the smallest annual increase since early 2021. Mexico's Senate has passed a controversial amendment to the country's constitution. NPR's Ada Peralta reports it makes sweeping changes to the country's judiciary.
The Senate began its session at its regular meeting place, but judiciary workers who have been on strike to protest the reform broke into the upper chamber to disrupt the proceedings. The Senate reconvened at an alternate site and worked into the early morning to pass the reform. The constitutional amendment means federal judges will now be popularly elected. Beginning next year, the country will hold elections to choose members of the Supreme Court. Critics of the reform say this reform is unprecedented in a big democracy and will end judicial independence. It's possible the current Supreme Court may end up reviewing the constitutionality of this reform. Ada Peralta, NPR News, Mexico City.
You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Massachusetts is joining the rest of the United States today in remembering the lives lost on 9/11, 23 years ago. As the United States marks the somber anniversary of the tragic September 11th terrorist attack on the World Trade Center in New York, the impact of that day can still be felt decades later. In the greater Boston community, remembering the events in many different forms from now until 1 p.m., Fenway Park is hosting the annual National Day of Service and Remembrance Blood Drive, where people are donating blood in honor of the people killed in the September 11 attacks. Then at 1:30 at the Boston Public Garden, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu will preside over the wreath-laying ceremony in the 9/11 Contemplative Garden. And at 5 this afternoon, there'll be a procession of pipes and drum bands, as well as honor guards from Boston Common to Ashburton Park for the Firefighter Memorial. That memorial will be open for public viewing at the close of that ceremony. Massachusetts has awarded Cambridge Public Schools nearly $200,000 to support unhoused students. State officials made the announcement yesterday saying the grant will reimburse Cambridge for costs that were incurred supporting unhoused students, especially those currently living in a state-run emergency shelter in East Cambridge. According to a Cambridge Public Schools spokesperson, the funds can be used to serve any student experiencing homelessness or housing instability. Red Sox and Orioles wrap up their 3-game series tonight at Fenway. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Simon & Schuster, publisher of The Highest Calling, Conversations on the American Presidency by David Rubenstein, featuring interviews with American presidents, historians, and journalists. Available wherever books are sold.
Eastern Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and broadcasting. Well, at least one of us is. I have COVID, but I feel fine. But Jim is broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. We're going to be joined by Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley in the 1 o'clock hour. We'll talk to her about the debate and a bunch of other things. But we want to start this show by marking the date, commemorating all these years since the 2021 terrorist attack. It's been 23 years now. The attack on the Twin Towers, a moment that shaped our history as a nation forever.
But for the majority of today's show, we're going to focus on last night's presidential debate, the first time Trump and Harris met each other. Although today, speaking of 9/11, they were standing feet apart at the 9/11 commemoration in New York. Both presidential candidates, both vice presidential candidates, just separated by Michael Bloomberg. By the way, before we start, I want to say Marjorie is a real trooper. She does have COVID. She says she feels okay. We're sorry you're not here. And so in light of the fact that we didn't even know how we're going to pull off the show till about 9:30, we promise you from the bottom of our hearts, total and complete chaos in today's show.
Hold on.
What's that?
It wasn't 9:30. It was about 11:15, Jim.
Oh, it was great. So we're going to be a little more disorganized than usual today.
Thank you to Cy, my colleague who rescued my system at home.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Cy.
And John Parker.
And John Parker.
Who
Okay, let's
did
mention
it too.
all of our coworkers.
Okay, well, they did. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, Jim,
great. Okay,
at all.
Fine. Okay.
On the best day of recent memory.
That's what I meant, how chaotic this is going to go. It's a good start for the show. In any case, the tone for the debate, I would say, was set before the candidates even got to their podiums, with Kamala Harris practically having to chase Donald Trump into a corner to shake his hand, which was good. By the way, we have a text question of the day, as we do every day now. It's our second week of this. Before we take your general calls and texts to get your impressions of last night's debate and what happens next, what was your reaction to both the moderators and the candidates on an issue that matters a huge amount to us, and we think you, climate change? Did you feel it got short shrift from the candidates? I guess in one candidate's case, it got no shrift at all. We want to know what your thoughts are about how climate change was addressed last night. 877-301-8970. You text us there, and we'll read some of your texts just before the 1 o'clock news. The debate, I would say, policy aside, showcased the temperament of each candidate. In a room with no audience, mics were muted most of the time when candidates weren't being addressed directly. Trump revealed himself, I think, to be exactly who we know him to be. And as many expected, Harris settled into her experience as a prosecutor, fixing her gaze, her attack lines directly on Trump for much of the 100 minutes last night. But will that resonate with the not insignificant portion of the American population who didn't feel they knew enough about her and, frankly, doesn't want to see a woman in charge? So the lines are open for a debate grab bag. We're going to spend much of today's show talking to you and our guests about last night's hugely important debate. How do we assess what happens next? How does Trump's performance, defensive, triggered, praising dictators, riddled with lies, compare with Harris's? Did she address the holes in her resume that concern you? Should there be a second debate? Will last night's debate affect what had been a dead heat race as of 9 o'clock last night? So what were your impressions, Marjorie Egan?
Well, I have made no secret for 8 years of my feelings about Donald Trump. I thought he was unhinged 8 years ago. Last night, he looked like an unhinged maniac and lunatic and very angry one there who couldn't even bring himself to look at Kamala Harris. I was so proud as a female, I got to tell you, because after he obliterated people in the low energy Bush, the little Marco Rubio, the lying Ted Cruz, after he obliterated those previous, when he was running the first time around, he really hurt Hillary Clinton in her debates. She just whacked him. I mean, she dominated him from the first. She started out a little bit nervous at her first answer about the economy, but after about 10 minutes in, she just dominated him. I was so thrilled. And I was particularly thrilled, not only because she's a woman, because she's a black woman. And he really has a problem, as we've seen with black women, from Fani Willis in Georgia to Letitia James in New York to the African-American news reporters who he's gone after, the women he's gone after. I had an estrogen surge last night, let me tell you, Jim. I think it was a coup because she managed to push him. And this is a line from Jonathan Swan, who did a great recap. And by the way, Jonathan Swan is probably the best person who ever interviewed Donald Trump. He's a great reporter. He's with the New York Times. He was on the Daily this morning talking about how she pushed him into these cul-de-sacs where when at the places where she's weakest, like on the economy and immigration, at least according to polls, she got him talking about he had the biggest rallies in the history of the world. She got him talking about the weirdest line of the entire night. Are we going to play the line of the entire night about the...
Well, I know you want to do this, obviously, and everybody knows this, but this is in the middle of a debate about who should be the leader of the free world. Here's Donald Trump talking about what he said happened as a result of immigrants being in Springfield, Ohio.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets there. And this is what's happening in our country.
ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there had been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So
again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
Let me just say one thing about this. And away from the hilarity of it, this whole idea, and it was Haitians he was picking on about it, so there's a racial undertone to that whole thing. But this is a guy that could blow up the whole world. This is the most powerful man on earth, or woman, as I'm hoping it's going to be, President of the United States. So this kind of person sees somebody on television that says that his pet was eaten by somebody who crossed the border from Haiti, a dog, and he believes it. I mean, I think the temperament and judgment issue of Donald Trump was just obliterated last night. Now I'll shut up.
Well, let me just say about that. Well, you mentioned hilarity. I mean, I have to say I smiled too because it was so out there. People should remember Comet Ping Pong Pizza. When early on there were discussions from the Trump team that I think it was General Flynn, actually, that there were children led into a pedophile ring in the basement of a restaurant that you and I went to during Inauguration Week that year, where a guy came up, I think from the Carolinas, and shot a live weapon into a packed room. These totally irresponsible, moronic, dangerous comments by both the vice presidential nominee and by Trump himself are going to put Haitians at risk. They're going to be Trump people who are going to say these people are doing these unimaginably horrible things. And in the name of my hero, Donald Trump, they're going to be at some risk. So it was a moment that I think, I'm a big fan of James Pindell and the Globe, but I don't know what he was watching last night.
I don't know either.
When he said there was no real damage done by Trump and nothing he said that we're going to remember. I think for the rest of his career, such as it is, this cat-eating moment is going to be part of it. Let me just give you my 2 cents, if I can, before we get to the calls and text. It was not a perfect performance by Harris. I mean, obviously, there were a couple of questions, like the first one, which she didn't answer, which I think is obvious. The economy thing, you're better off than 4 years ago. Should have done it directly. She didn't really address the flip-flops that she said she would address one by one. And there were a couple other things. Having said that, I think it was the most complete domination in a debate that I have ever seen in my life. And you might say the greatest domination was Trump and Biden a few months ago. I would say no. While Biden was horrible, Trump wasn't so hot either. What stood out was Biden's inability to do a debate. Last night, there was total and complete control. And as you said, domination by one of the two candidates, and the other one was rambling, confused, lying, bait-taking. The moment that I will never forget, and you knew this was happening, not only the crowd size thing, which he got into and, of course, starts talking about himself, when she says, this is a great thing about people who leave in his rallies, they're so bored, they can't see straight. As soon as she used his own word, talking about how he was seen as weak, you knew that for the whole rest of the debate, he was going to use it like a 4-year-old back at her the whole night. It was brilliantly constructed, the whole damn thing, from going over to him for the handshake to looking at him in the camera regularly while he has that odd thing on his face. You know, for those of you who are honest, who were concerned about Joe Biden's performance, and by the way, we were totally honest the morning after that debate about how abysmal Biden was and how he had to drop out of the race. What did Keith Olbermann, who I almost never quote, Keith Olbermann, I think, tweeted last night, who are the Republicans going to get to replace him? I mean, he was totally out of his element. No ability to have any real position in the debate. In any case, we want to know what you think. Should there be a second debate? Is it going to move the needle? Coming into last night, it was an absolute dead heat. Every single poll. By the way, when you see the New York Times and the Washington Post, which I consider to be the two finest papers in America, in their headlines saying that it was domination by one candidate or the other candidate was on defense, which is what they did, you know that it was a walkover kind of night. Would you not agree?
It was. I thought it was absolutely.
No, I meant in terms of the press coverage. The fact that the Times and the Washington Post.
The cover of Time magazine, it's got Trump in a golf cart going down a hill into a sand trap, saying he's in big trouble. And you know, I'm not a fan of Twitter either, or X as we're supposed to call it now. But when you went on Twitter last night, you saw the cats across America running for their lives. Climbing across burning buildings to escape the migrants that were supposedly coming to get them. It was just incredible.
In any case, those are our preliminary thoughts from last night's rather incredible debate. We want to know what yours are. 877-301-8970. I'm going to be taking all the calls today because since Marjorie had to go home at the last minute, her call screen is not working, but she's getting all the texts, so if you want to text your thoughts, because the lines are full, you know, as always, it's 877-301-8970. Rama in Marlboro, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Hey there.
Hello. Good morning. Marjorie, I love you. Jim, yes, I love you too.
Well, it's okay. That was an afterthought, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
That was, but I do love you.
Well, it's okay.
And I agree with all your things about Trump, but my view is Trump was being Trump. He was being strong. He was being assertive. He was being aggressive. He was being Trump. My view, and I'm going to vote for Harris and the Walz ticket, of course. I'm a devout independent, but I am going to support them. But my worst fears came about, and I'm not sure what people were watching. I think she got dominated. It was like a tennis match. Him going back, running her back and forth. The only time she challenged him and really put him in his place was the "eat your lunch" comment. Otherwise, I think she was dominated. I think she came across weak, scared, and unsure about so many things. She didn't answer the flip-flop questions. She didn't answer. She didn't do what you folks have been doing, is calling that Trump tried to overthrow the government. She talked about January 6th, but really didn't hammer it home. She didn't really hammer home anything. She should have annihilated him, left and right and left and
Rama,
right.
I have to say, you made your point. We obviously have a disagreement.
Yeah, I got to say.
Thanks for the call, though.
Weak. Again, I don't know how you could. I mean, he looked like a lunatic. Was the overall thing to me, and she backed him into corner after corner. I mean, it's true. She didn't explain herself on gun buyback program. She didn't explain herself very well on fracking. She didn't answer some of those questions. But I think it was a feel that you get about somebody. I think, do we have the abortion clip yet?
Yeah, we do. Here is
where I think the whole debate turned, because he has gone back and forth a million different ways on abortion. And here was Kamala Harris. I mean, I think she took off here and never looked back. Here she is.
You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot? She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that.
Can I tell you what preceded that? It starts, you just heard Harris saying you don't want to talk about this is what people wanted. The question, I thought phrased beautifully by Lindsay Davis, listed every single one of the different positions that Donald Trump has taken on choice, realizing that's the greatest vulnerability, the Republican ticket, their anti-choice position, and Trump bragging that he's responsible for the repeal of Roe v. Wade because of his nomination and confirmation, ultimately, of 3 of justices. But what his response was, which he's done before, every single Democrat, every single legal expert, this is what they prayed for. They got exactly what they wanted. This going back to the states, which, of course, is not at all what people who believe in freedom wanted. They wanted Roe v. Wade to stay in place. So you thought that was their major moment, huh?
I think it was. I think it was a great answer, and I think he would not answer the question about whether he would ban a national, whether he would sign a national abortion ban.
And by the way, to the credit of Davis, even though she couldn't get an answer, she repeatedly asked him again to answer it, and he wouldn't do it.
I also think a lot of credit goes to David Muir and Lindsay Davis, because they did fact check the most outrageous things, like the dogs being eaten by up and down the streets in Springfield, and the cats as well, and also what Trump has said repeatedly. Republicans say this a lot too, that abortions are happening up to the day of birth, which is ridiculous.
And after.
That's what he has claimed over and over again, that what's happening is babies are being born and they're being executed on the delivery table. That is insane. It is not happening. They fact-checked him on that as well. So I think they didn't do that in CNN, and I'm glad they did it last night.
By the way, before we get to your next call, since Rama mentioned the comment about Putin and Donald Trump, here is Harris defending NATO and its support of Ukraine and criticizing Trump for being against it.
Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
That was a hell of a line. Lauren in Marblehead, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Thank you much for calling. Hi, Lauren.
Good morning. Good morning, perpetual caller, as you might know.
Thank you so much.
So 3 brief thoughts.
Yeah.
I am dancing around my house today, not from the coffee.
Me too.
I agree with it without repeating all the wisdom, all the smart things and insightful things you said this morning. I will simply add that I do love 2 things. One is I do love seeing someone bully a bully with strategic wisdom.
Yeah.
Love when a bully's bullied. And lastly, I'm no Swiftie. I think she's an amazing human being. I respect her 100% and then some. But man, was that just the icing on the cake.
We're going to talk to Sue O'Connell about that in a couple of minutes. If you don't know, right after the debate, Taylor Swift indicated who she'd be voting for. Sue will fill in the blanks. Lauren, thank you much for your call.
Trump may still win. Obviously, this race is going to be extremely close. Right. And since nothing that Trump does, no matter how dangerous or crazy or, having left planet Earth on many of his statements, it doesn't seem to dissuade any of his voters. So he may still win. But this last night was extremely satisfying. And you'd have to wonder, I mean, Rama is a frequent caller. he seemed to see it in a way that was so different, even though he's
entitled.
Harris voter. But I'm saying I think that maybe there are a lot of people who see it differently. I didn't, but others obviously disagree.
You know what almost got virtually no play from last night, and then we've got to take a break, is the Trump's position on health care. He was asked a question about the Affordable Care Act. The basic thrust of the question is, you promised a plan and you really never delivered. And here is Trump's response to the question about whether he actually has a plan after 9 years of promises made on the campaign trail and while he was serving as president.
What we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan.
That's pretty damning, since it's an issue that affects every single person listening to the show. The number is 877-301-8097. We've got to take a break.
Before we do, here's Laurel in Connecticut. I was impressed that Donald Trump was able to make a literary reference. Run, spot, run. Remember that?
I do indeed.
Okay, we're taking a break. We're talking obviously about the debate last night. What did you think about it? 877-301-8970 is the number to reach us. At least one of us, that would be Jim, is broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. I'm home but with COVID, but feeling fine, I think, because I've had a million shots. You can call us or reach us at 877-301-8970, 877-301-8970.
Venezuela's opposition leader Edmundo Gonzalez is vowing to fight for democracy even after fleeing his country, where he's widely recognized as a winner of the presidential election and where there's also a warrant for his arrest. What it would take to get Gonzalez home, that story, and the latest news from around the globe, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Barrett Tree Service East. Their team of arborists and plant healthcare professionals provides sustainable management for the care of trees, plants, and lawns in the communities where they live and serve. Learn more at barretttreeeast.com. And Heal Veterinary Clinic in Watertown, committed to providing their clients with conversation-focused visits and caring for pets with low-stress animal handling techniques. Heal Vet, a better experience for you and your pet. Heal.vet.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. I am at the Boston Public Library Live. Marjorie has COVID. She says she feels fine. Nevertheless, she's courageously plowing through, hopefully his health, as she coughs, as healthy as she says she is. By the way, Donald Trump is saying that it is unlikely that he would agree to a second debate. We'll see what the deal is. He's the one I thought wanted 3 debates at the beginning of this. I don't know what happened. And speaking of, I just wanted to give you an example of what I almost never see, because headlines in responsible papers are always so neutral. Here's the lead headline in the Washington Post online. Harris dominated Trump in the debate, but tight race is still ahead. And Maureen in Bradford raises an interesting point in a text to Marjorie. It's obvious men are just too emotional to be president, which I think is a very, very fine point. 877-301-8970. You know what's incredible? It's incredible that everybody knew that Harris was going to try to bait Trump.
Right.
Trump knew it. And I'm sure his people said, don't take the bait. And he really can't resist. I mean, it is amazing. You knew every time she dropped a little crumb for him to chase after. Didn't you know he was going to do the chasing like in a nanosecond?
Excuse me. Since I have COVID, I forget, Jim. Do we play the clip yet about the crowd size?
No, we didn't do that. You want to play that?
Yeah. I mean, she baited in on that one really big. And it was when they were talking about immigration, which he worked in probably 20 times. He managed to go back to immigration 20 times, but sometimes he didn't do it very effectively. And here's one of those times when he is, this is the crowd size clip when she baits him about his crowd sizes.
And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you.
She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
And by the way, do you know that he said after the debate last night that it was his best debate performance in capital letters ever?
Right.
Do you know that? Ever.
But he also did something that candidates almost never do, which is go into the scrum after the debate where the reporters are there. That's very, very unusual.
Well, he's rather unusual. Have you found him to be rather unusual?
I think he's... I think when you looked at him from the side, too, people talk about Biden looking old.
Yeah.
When you looked at him kind of almost hunched over the podium, he was not looking good. And she emphasized that without saying he was 78 years old or 79, however old he is. She talked about how she's a new generation. Let's not go back. Let's go forward. Let's move forward. And I think that might have been effective for people, too.
Let's go to Chris in Bellingham. You're on Boston Public Radio with Marjorie Egan at home with COVID and me right here at the library. Hey there.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, so honestly, I'm just disappointed in the debate moderators because the first job of journalism is to the truth. And when you have a known liar like Trump on stage, you got to hold his feet to the fire. You got to fact check him, all of this stuff. And it's the same for both candidates. They need more fact checking. And honestly, I think they really need to hold the candidates and follow up and say, answer the question, answer the question.
Well, I have to say, it's interesting. I thought they did a hell of a lot of fact-checking. And there were times when they did fact-checking before Harris even got to respond, I was saying to myself, shouldn't we let her fact-check or do whatever she chooses to do? But I think the conventional wisdom is, Chris, particularly after the CNN debate, the decision was made not to do fact-checking at all, that they were fairly thorough. The one place I will agree with you, there were some questions. I mean, for example, I think it was Lindsay Davis who asked, I'm not sure who actually, if it was Lindsay Davis. One of them asked, you say you're going to deport 11 million people. How are you going to do that? You're going to go door to door? What are you going to do? And as always, he doesn't answer the question. There they didn't follow up, and I think they should have followed up with Harris when she was asked, is the economy better than it was 4 years ago? She didn't answer. When she said she would address all three of the flip-flops that were asked about in the question, she only addressed fracking. There, I think you may have a point, but didn't you think that they competently covered a huge range of topics in 100 minutes, Chris, or no?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd really like to see more follow-up questions, kind of like...
Me too, I know.
What's his name? Kyle Clark in Colorado when he was moderating the Republican primary debate. I'd love to see more reporters like him.
What was the moment there? I'm not familiar. What was the moment that impressed you there?
Really, when he was just bringing up that Republican senator or representative who would call people names and stuff, and he was just like, "Why do you talk to people like that?"
Mm-hmm. I have to say the only other thing I'll say, because a huge part of me agrees with you. I like relentless follow-up. Arguably the greatest interviewer who ever lived, Tim Russert, spoke about follow-up questions in interviews about interviewing, and he would say you have to make a calculation as to when to stop, knowing that the audience has already come to the conclusion that interviewee is refusing to answer the question. And maybe that's the calculation they made, even though I have a lot of sympathy for your point of view. Chris, thank you very much for the call. 877-301-8970.
The spin from Trump camp is that they only fact-checked Trump and not Harris. But Harris didn't say things she didn't answer a lot of the questions. That's absolutely true. She evaded a lot. But she didn't say things that were insane, like, Haitians running around Springfield, Ohio, stealing dogs to eat for dinner, or that babies are killed on the delivery room table after they're born. He got away with that in the first debate with Biden, and those were so outrageous. I think he almost had to, because my God, some people, I suppose, might believe that.
Yeah, it did seem like they were fact checking him much more than her, which they were. But you stated the reason is because there was much more to fact check.
She didn't state these outrageous things. She may have
she did
things,
some
but
avoidance,
she didn't say
but I agree.
Lunatic things.
I agree. Made up things. Jennifer in Holliston, you're on Boston Public Radio. We're obviously talking about last night's debate.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. How are you?
We're very well, thank you. Well, Marjorie's not so well,
So
but
I just,
I am.
yeah. Two things, I think. First, I initially called to say I was really impressed with how Vice President Harris was able to be positive. She didn't take his bait. She maybe got a little huffy one time during the whole debate. And if you look back at other debates, he's always been able to bring people down to his level. I was impressed with that. And as a NICU nurse, I just want to say that every time Trump or anybody else raises that stupid thing about the 9-month-old babies being killed, I can barely say it, is so insulting and wrong. And any baby that dies at 9 months old, it's because something tragic happened.
Well,
that's all I wanted to say.
Well, you said it beautifully, Jennifer.
Thank you very
Once
much
again,
for that call.
I don't mean to be a broken record, but Lindsay Davis did it again, and she did it in very measured fashion. I think her response to that comment was, it is illegal in every single state to do what you're suggesting is. Oh, we do have that. Thank you, Aiden, for telling me. Here's that exactly what I was talking about. Here it is.
But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
Very matter of fact, I thought you did a beautiful job. We got to take a break.
Okay, this is a little bit off color, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Oh, good.
From Kara on Cape Cod.
Good.
She is waiting for Vance and Trump to take the next logical step and claim Haitian immigrants are eating all those babies doctors are executing post-birth.
You're like a little kid. When your kids were little and they got stuck on something, you have to say, I knew this was going to... As soon as he said it last night, Marjorie and I were not texting as usual because I guess she was early onset COVID. And it was pretty clear.
I didn't have COVID till this morning. I didn't have it yesterday.
Okay, the second he said that, I knew that it was going to be nonstop dog and cat eating here.
It was.
Boston
I was texting with my children, and we agreed that millions of immigrants are coming to the United States of America to eat dogs.
Okay.
That's the issue, Jim.
Before Marjorie takes the break, I'm going to say off and on throughout the whole show, we're going to talk to our guests, and then in the final hour, entertain your phone calls and texts yet again on your impression of last night's pretty important debate.
Okay, thank you very much for all the calls and texts. We couldn't get to them all, and I apologize. But our media maven, Sue O'Connell, is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Now playing on the GBH News YouTube channel.
This morning they were waiting for the blacks who arrived at South Boston High.
Never cried. Boston's busing legacy.
You don't think about tomorrow, you just think about today when you get in there, get on that bus, get off that bus, get in that school. Then I'm going through today. Thank God I got out. I'm going home. And then the next day.
Watch on youtube.com/GBH News.
Support for GBH comes from you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan. Ranked /1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Massachusetts Maritime Academy, the Commonwealth's leadership university. They offer a hands-on learning environment, helping to prepare their students to be global leaders in careers on land or at sea. Maritime.edu.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. I am broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. She is broadcasting live from her kitchen or some such thing. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. On streaming, can they see her too? They see her in wherever she is in her house there. Congresswoman Presley is going to call us in the 1 o'clock hour to let us know what she thought. And once again, we were inundated with texts and calls. Not surprisingly, we will take more texts and calls in the 1 o'clock hour as well, so stick around. Joined now, though, at the library desk by our favorite local woman, media maven Sue O'Connell. She's co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, co-host with Corey Smith of NBC 10 Boston's At Issue every Sunday at 11:30. Following Meet the Press. Hello, Sue O'Connell.
Good day. Good day.
Good day to you, too,
Marjorie,
Sue.
I have a question for you.
Oh, good.
Were you pre-COVID last night when you, after so many years, decided to follow me on Twitter, or is this a bot? Like, finally,
No.
Marjorie Egan
It's a
is
bot.
following.
There's no way she was on Twitter.
What happened is I was pre-COVID last night. I tested negative last night, but positive this morning. But I was following everyone on. I don't often go on Twitter, but I started following all these people because I was so excited about all the Twitter shots of the cats, that were hanging from windowsills as they were trying to escape the Haitian immigrants and running through
Finally,
fields.
that's what it took for me to get a Marjorie Egan follow on X.
That's right. So what'd you think of last night?
So I listen. I don't understand why Donald Trump cannot stick to the script. I realize he's been successful. He's a very successful human being, whether you disagree with him or think he's evil or do agree with him. He is a successful business person with a successful media career. Well, he's not in jail and he still has all the money.
That is correct.
Right? And he's been president of the United States and he's running again and he cannot follow the directions. So I keep going into these debates and these events with him trying to be open-minded and not biased and think this time he's going to be able to do some of it, and he failed miserably. She was masterful in so many levels that I tried to go into it open-minded. I watched a lot of debates that Kamala Harris did over and over again. I watched them in California. Not only was she baiting him, but the split screen she knew how to use.
Boy, did she
ever.
ever.
And she made immediate memes, right? So the hand, like who does this, right? I'm putting my hand on my chin, like a book cover, book cover. She did that during one of his answers. Immediate meme. I mean, she just totally dominated him in the way that people who have dealt with her when she was district attorney and dealt with her when she was attorney general in California would say they were terrified of when they had to deal with her because she would be so prepared and so charismatic. And from that standpoint, I think it was a huge loss for him and a huge victory for her, introducing herself, remember, to a large number of voters who say they are undecided. I don't know if they're undecided between Trump and Harris, or they're undecided if they're going to vote, or they were undecided because they wanted to learn more about her. But I don't think she could have done a better job last night.
I have to say, Marjorie and I said repeatedly on the air, we were really nervous. And by the way, we were nervous about saying we were nervous. I was nervous, yeah. Until Doris Kearns Goodwin said she was nervous too. And then we felt it was okay to be nervous, she told us yesterday. I have to say, I was not just nervous, but wildly nervous after she didn't answer the first question.
Right.
First question was the most important issue to most voters, the economy. Do you believe people are better off than they are 4 years ago? And I was hoping she'd answer it directly and say, most people are. Let's be honest. Some people are not. We have to address their needs, acknowledging imperfection. But the rest of her performance was so dominating that I think that caused that evasion, for lack of a better expression, to get lost.
Yeah, I was fascinated listening to Michelle Wu yesterday here when you asked her about debates, and she said how she feels like, I'm paraphrasing, I'm never good at debates. It's so stressful. And remember, Harris and Trump hadn't met before. There's a part of that that adds
so
to
weird.
it. And it took both of them, I think, a few minutes to get their footing. He was actually staying on script, following directions at the beginning of the debate. But what I was most impressed with about Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, was her patience. Her ability to just wait. At one point I'm like, when is this going to happen? And she would put those little crumbs out there. She seasoned it down the road. She was like leading Hansel and Gretel to the oven, basically.
You know what's incredible? Everybody knows that Taylor Swift on Instagram, signed Childless Cat Lady, endorsed last night, or said she'd be voting for Kamala Harris. I think she went on to say, you do whatever you do. I don't think she urged everybody to do it. You know what's amazing about the power of a Taylor Swift, who's a sort of a once-in-a-lifetime person? Her voting, saying she's voting for Harris, was right under the headlines in major media in this country about the debate itself. I mean, that's how significant it was perceived to be. but I don't know if it's significant at all. Is it?
It's hugely significant.
No, I mean, does it move anybody?
Yes, it absolutely does. So first of all, you can tell it wasn't arranged with the campaign. Because if I had been in charge of the Harris campaign, it takes away from the night. I would have said, can you do it on Thursday instead of 2 minutes after the debate ended? So it obviously was spontaneous. So let's just go back in history to 2018 when Taylor Swift had her movie out, Miss Americana, I think it's called, and she talked with her dad. It was a documentary about how she felt responsible to do something politically, and he was warning her, you might lose people, it could hurt your career, it could hurt you personally, I'm worried about your safety. And she cried and said, I have to use this power. Again, I'm paraphrasing. So in October of 2018, she went out and urged on Instagram people to register to vote. And what happened
in Tennessee Senate race, right?
Right. And by noon on Tuesday, the number of registered voters grew to 102,000 in Tennessee. And then she endorsed 2 Democrats. One of them won, one of them lost. He was an incumbent, I think, that got reelected. But he was on the bubble. So her just saying, and I think she very carefully phrased the Instagram endorsement, as you noted, Jim, saying, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what I'm doing because people, like, I shouldn't say Trump, took my image, took my identity, and made it AI and made it seem like I'm doing something. And my friendship with Brittany Mahomes, who's a MAGA person, is being twisted.
Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback of the Chiefs, best player in football's wife.
And I want to be clear who I'm voting for. Do your own research. This is what I care about. And then she signed it as a single cat lady, of course, which is a major... Holding her cat, which she posed for on Time Magazine when she was Woman of the Year. She posed with her cat.
Okay.
So that's a shot at J.D. Vance. It's a shot at Trump for trying to co-opt her identity and her business. And then Elon Musk has the gall today from his account on X, basically saying, I'll basically put a baby in you, and then I will defend you and your cat till the end of time. Again, if there's any question what some of these people want to do, just reread The Handmaid's Tale and let me know what chapter the cat lady gets kidnapped by the evil millionaire and suddenly is locked in a tower.
You know, by the way, I want to get back to, by the way, Musk's comments are absolutely nauseating and just misogynistic, nauseating,
all around,
horrible. He's got 12 kids already, by the way, for those at least 12 kids. I want to get back to the notion, that father-daughter discussion that I was not aware of. For people who think it's not a big deal, remember Michael Jordan, one of the most iconic figures of our lifetime, when he wouldn't get involved in politics, his quote, it's virtually this, was Republicans buy sneakers too.
Yeah.
There's that person. I remember the first time I ever met Rick Steves when he was in Massachusetts before he started coming on our show to campaign for the legalization of marijuana, even though I don't think he smokes marijuana. He's a libertarian type and believes in freedom. And I said, you're going to lose a lot of business. And he said, so be it. So there is a consequence of doing. And by the way, I admire people right, left, and middle who are willing to sacrifice some of their wealth and popularity to say what they care about.
No, I agree. And I never criticize someone on the extreme right who's an entertainer or a writer who expresses their view. And again, I mean, we tear ourselves up a lot over this person art. You know, can we still go to a Woody Allen movie? Can we still enjoy Sisters? You know, and meanwhile, Taylor Swift is just saying, this is who I'm voting for. Listen, her income that she generates for towns and cities and states and countries, she's like her own country. So, you know,
you were there, weren't you, Sue? Weren't you down in Gillette Stadium for the big event?
I can't talk about this concert because, you know, we were one of those Ticketmaster victims that we had bought tickets for before COVID, and then we were supposed to get a code, and then we didn't get a code, and then we didn't get to go. But I've forgiven, you know, her.
Apparently, you've really gotten over it.
It's a little. But yes, I've seen Taylor like 522 times. So
really?
Yeah, I'm not too sad. Don't feel bad. Too bad.
You know,
for me.
one of the other things about the debate we haven't talked much about is Harris. Generally, the person in any campaign, city council or president, who wants a debate is the candidate who's in trouble. The person after the debate who you would have thought would have said, let's keep doing this, is Donald Trump, regardless of what the polls show. He obviously got crushed last night. I think most people would agree. Most people have agreed in polling. CNN with like 67-33 or something thought that Harris had won. And Trump said unlikely. Were you surprised that or was that baiting him yet again?
No, I think it's baiting him. He was around last night. He went into the spin room last night trying to get attention, which was also kind of pitiful to watch. And then he was talking this morning. I think he called into Fox this morning saying that if you lose, you want to debate again. You don't. If you win a prize fight, you don't immediately say, let's do it again. You say, let's do it again if you lose. So he's trying to paint her as a loser in this debate. So, I mean, I think, obviously, I think there should be more debates for everybody all the time. But I think he's going to be put in a corner where they're going to start calling him a coward. They're going to start calling him a chicken. And then that's going to bait him some more. So we'll see if he actually goes on to another debate.
Just a quick thing that I forgot to mention before about the debate. Chris Wallace, who worked for Fox News forever, son of Mike Wallace, of course, and he left Fox News. He did the debate that Biden and Trump were screaming at each other at when Biden said, please, man, can you just shut up or whatever he said. He analyzed this said she pitched a shutout, is what he said last night, and reminded everybody that she brought in the fact the military leaders that she has served with, and she listed some people, called them a disgrace. And I thought that was and she listed the people, Liz Cheney and her father, Dick Cheney, the Republicans that are opposed to him, and other countries' leaders laughing at him. All those things I thought really managed to bait him and get his ire up.
We're in a moment in American history where when you watch any of the apocalyptic movies and books and stuff that I enjoy so much, that when push comes to shove and the world or the people or whatever are about to be wiped off the planet, there's always some section that go, okay, I'm going to go take care of myself, and then the enemies unite and try to defeat the evil that's coming. We are in a moment right now where Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley and former Vice President Dick Cheney are voting for the same person for President of the United States. And both of them do not agree with Kamala Harris 100%, and one of them probably disagrees with her a lot more. However, that's how high the stakes are, and that's what they're doing.
What we should spend a minute or two on, which we haven't at all yet, are the allegedly undecided voters. So let's start by talking about, I guess, the highest profile undecided voter, Melania Trump. Now, Melania...
The most successful immigrant in the history of the United States.
Now, Melania Trump, I did not know this till yesterday, my apologies, has a book coming out, interesting title, Melania. It's coming out October 8th. Here's sound from a video she posted to social media, raising questions about the attempted assassination of her husband. That was in July, and it's sort of a quasi-ad for the memoir. Here's a little bit of Melania Trump.
The attempt to end my husband's life was a horrible, distressing experience. Now, the silence around it feels heavy. I can't help but wonder, why didn't law enforcement officials arrest the shooter before the speech? There is definitely more to this story, and we need to uncover the truth.
Speaking of more to the story, so if she's willing to say those kinds of things, assuming it's not a hostage video kind of thing, why is she not... I'm serious, but why is she not by his side?
She has
Whether
told
it's
us.
at the trial
she does not care. She does not care. She cares. I mean, I've never met her. I've only talked to a couple of people who have had small interactions with her. She is on her own path, and she is doing what she wants to do, and this is going to help her sell books. She's able to, yes, it's a good question. Why wasn't he arrested before he shot? There were opportunities. There's obviously problems. She's feeding into the conspiracy theory low-key. She might also ask why he was able to get a gun. How about that? That would be a good question that we could all agree with. She has this lane. I got to tell you, I have this weird admiration for Melania, and I think she just is staying in her lane. Who would have thought that the First Lady would stay in New York after her husband gets elected? Remember, she was in New York for like 4 months while he was for the first term of his presidency.
Well, there are credible reports that they were negotiating the terms of her moving.
Can you imagine doing that, though? I mean, this is like she lives in her own world that she has created. And the book I'm not really that excited about because I already read Michelle Obama's book, and I imagine that a lot of what was in Michelle Obama's book might be in Melania's book.
You should explain that reference for those who don't know.
Melania accidentally cribbed Michelle Obama's
at the convention,
speech
right?
at the convention.
Yeah.
But it was, again, someone wrote it for her, and they just forgot to do the AI upgrade on making Michelle Obama's speech a Republican speech.
You know what I'm reminded by when I made it was a joke for the 3 people who didn't get it. It wasn't funny, but it was a joke about Melania being undecided. Do you remember, Marjorie, when you were doing Don Imus, the late Don Imus's show from time to time, which was on our old radio station? Imus says the day after Curry loses, he says Curry, the morning after he lost, went out to get the newspaper, and while he was out, Teresa changed the locks, which I thought was a pretty good, was a pretty good line. Actually, Teresa Hines,
Teresa Hines, his
wife. Yes.
Yes.
So, in any case, we're talking to Sue O'Connell.
Just give us an update. There was this terrible death of Sandra Birchmore, a 23-year-old woman, died in 2021. Officials initially said, including the medical examiner, that it was a suicide. The cops seemed to be on board with that, and then the feds came in and said it wasn't a suicide, it was a murder. There was one officer is in jail, the alleged person that killed her. But what do we know more about this at this point, Sue?
Well, I think that the case is going to take a long time to move through the court system. The detention hearing was waived last week. There are a number.
So he's in custody.
He's in custody. He's being held. There is a lot of crossover of state police who were involved in this case and the Karen Reed case, so you're going to be hearing a lot of that. And, this is, again, another one of these cases where the investigation did not seem, of the woman's death, did not seem to be thorough enough. There was a gold necklace that was next to her that was not noted. The medical examiner said it was a suicide, and then death by suicide, and then another firm looked at it and said it wasn't. And then you have the relationship. Stoughton, of course, is right next to Canton, and there's a lot of overlap there. So this is another one of those cases which is going to be incredibly confusing. People are going to have to recuse themselves from it, and this is one of those programs where this police officer, Farwell, was in charge of the youth outreach to Stoughton kids, and she was a young, troubled girl who went to this and he developed a relationship with her, which was clearly grooming, and I'm not using it in the conservative way, in the real way, and ended up raping her, and she became pregnant with his baby.
When she was 15, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's a horrible case, and again, we're going to see a lot. I can't say this enough. If you live in a town or a city, you need to look and see how well-trained your police department is.
Yeah.
Let's stop worrying about if we have tanks in case we get invaded by someone, and see what their training is, who is overseeing them, and what happens when there are complaints about officers, what the process is. Every single one of us should know that, because this is not a Canton problem or a Stoughton problem or a Mass State Police problem. We need to be more involved in the actual policing that's being done, not just budgets, not just diversity, those are all important, but the actual training of policing and the oversight of them.
We only have 30 seconds left. We asked the governor the other day about whether she'd spoken to the medical examiner, and she said, well, she's cooperating with the U.S. Attorney's Office looking into this, but she hadn't spoken to her. This government, our government in this state, is so untransparent.
It's the worst.
Don't you feel the medical examiner has an obligation to answer whatever questions they can answer about their conclusion it was suicide, and obviously a conclusion by the U.S. Attorney's Office that it was anything but? We only have 30 seconds.
One of the things I learned about at the Karen Reed trial is how hard medical examiners are lobbied by investigators to come to a conclusion. So, yes, transparency in this state it's worse than Florida. Just let you know, the Sunshine State is great, but I think we need a lot more transparency. Maybe if we had some movement on this and Beacon Hill and had some new elected, no one ran for office.
No, they said when they get back from their 5-month vacation,
they'll be back.
They're going to take it up.
Don't worry, your lawmakers are very busy at Beacon Hill.
Great to see you. This would be Sue O'Connell. Thank you, Sue.
Sue O'Connell, thank you very much for joining us. Sue O'Connell is co-publisher of Bay Window.
Lakshmi Singh. President Biden, Vice President Harris, former President Donald Trump, and his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, attended the 9/11 memorial ceremony in New York this morning. The This hour, Biden, Harris, and Trump are scheduled to travel to the Flight 93 Memorial in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. NPR's Eric McDaniel has this report.
None of the candidates are official.
Fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom.
She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this.
Observers say a number of falsehoods and goading in a high-stakes debate ahead of the November election. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Ukraine's capital.
This, quote, a significant escalation. Joanna Kakissis, NPR News, Kyiv.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Don't look now, but if you look up in Central Square, Cambridge, pretty soon, you'll see police surveillance cameras. In a meeting last night, the Cambridge City Council gave a 2 thumbs up to the controversial proposal from the Cambridge Police Department. CPD Commissioner Christine Elo told the City Council that the department wants the surveillance cameras to be used as an additional tool in helping to keep Central Square safe. Elo says those cameras in Central Square would serve as a test run before adding them in other locations throughout the city, including in Harvard Square. A 33-year-old Edgartown man has pleaded guilty for taking part in a brazen bank robbery on Martha's Vineyard in 2022. Miguel Antonio Jones admitted in Boston federal court yesterday that he was one of 4 masked men who took almost $40,000 at gunpoint, tied up a bank employee, and sped off in one of the workers' cars. 2 of Jones's co-conspirators have already pleaded guilty to related charges. The 4th is expected to plead guilty tomorrow. Sentencing is scheduled for December 2nd. And fans of the popular Busy Bee restaurant on Beacon Street in Brookline are keeping their fingers crossed for a possible resurrection of the recently closed establishment. The Busy Bee closed this week after 56 years in business, and its owner says the decision to close the business came after experiencing labor challenges, calling it a bittersweet and tough choice. Brookline News is reporting that a note left on the door of the business last week says the owners are currently negotiating with a prospective new restaurant tenant and to keep the name the Busy Bee. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Organic Valley, a farmer-owned dairy cooperative of small organic family farms dedicated to protecting where food comes from. Learn more about Organic Valley at ov.coop. This is NPR.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio, hour number 2. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. At least Jim is. I have COVID and I'm at home. But we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Congressman Ayanna Pressley is going to join us in the 1 o'clock hour. Our text question of the day, before we get to our next guest, Juliette Kayyem, both the candidates and the moderators barely got to climate change in last night's debate. Were you disappointed by leaving it to the end of the debate, following up and fact-checking? Text us your thoughts at 877-301-8970, and we'll read some of them before the 1 o'clock newscast. Hello again, Jim.
Are you really feeling okay, or are you just saying that because you're a kind soul?
No, so far so good. Well, I've had all my shots, and I think that really helps.
I think it does
when
too.
you get COVID, you don't get very sick. I hope. Fingers crossed.
Great. We're now joined by National Security Advisor expert Juliette Kayyem. She's former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under Barack Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. Her latest book is The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. See if you can pronounce any of that properly, Jim. Hello, Juliette. How are you?
Hello to both of you, and I hope you're feeling okay, Marjorie.
Yeah, thank you. So far, so good.
I'm zooming in from California, so sorry
good
to miss
for you.
Oh, there she is.
But I'll be
good for you.
I'll be live next week.
Marjorie's zooming in from Brookline, just to be clear.
I know.
It's not quite as
so
exotic,
bad.
yeah.
No, it's okay. Fine. It's fine. It's fine. But I just wanted to mention, sometimes I record 60 Minutes on Sunday night, because often they have some big breaking news stories on that show. And I did it Sunday night, and they had a relook at 9/11 and the firefighters that went into that building, knew they were going to die. You know, one firefighter saying goodbye to his brother as he sent him into the building, knowing that it was very likely that they were going to die. especially after they realized when the South Tower collapsed. So it just put in perspective the heroism of that day, of the New York City firefighters and the cops and the first responders. So seeing that, and then finding out that 9/11 has become this kind of funny meme for some young people. What's this all about?
I mean, it's just it's just 23 years later, the before after aspects of 9/11 for you and I, right? There was this world, and then there was this new world. It's just not felt by a generation born after that or quite young then, and that some of the memes, the most horrific images of our time, the whispering by the chief of staff into Bush's ear about what was happening has become
Andy Card from Massachusetts.
Yeah, Andy Card, right? So there has become sort of a meme about whenever some sort of jokes are said about it, like they fill in the caption of funny and because I think the import isn't understood. I want to be clear. I don't mean to say I want to denigrate a generation. I think what we're experiencing, especially year 23, where it doesn't have the drama of 20 or 25, or is the traumas that these generations have faced, that I experience as a faculty, as a professor, because I see new generations come in between the financial crisis, which they experienced as young kids, or obviously COVID or Hurricane Katrina, or even the Trump presidency, as well as two wars fought in the name of 9/11 that were not successful. So they're viewing it in a very different way than us. And it hit me today. I'll end with this: like we're some of the name readers at the memorial are the grandchildren of people who perished. They're the children of the young kids that we met. And that all of a sudden it dawned on me, the sort of generational trauma that these families will have as well.
We're talking to Juliette Kayyem. So, Juliette, we're asking everybody, you near the top of the list there, what'd you make, what was your general impression from last night's 100 Minutes?
Let me start with her. She did fantastic. I mean, I thought, look, it pays to have a strategy, and it pays to prep. And that strategy of let him dig his own grave, because that essentially is her campaign, is her messaging, which is we're not going back to that. This is madness. She can't describe the madness as much as he can describe the madness. And so it was amazing to watch. The crowd size one was the one when I finally sort of caught on. God. Right. This is not an accident, but even little things that I note now in rereading some of the lines, like when she says, do you really want Donald Trump's hands on your bodily decisions? I mean, we know exactly what she's talking about. So I thought she did terrific. She's super smart. I thought she brought in the policies appropriately, sometimes a bit too wonkish in some ways. I'm going to counter all the demands for her to have more policy, and never shied. I thought that was great. But I think it's time it's now right, and you've seen a lot of commentaries by people who may not have touched this with a 10-foot pole before, that his capacity to govern, whether it's age, whether it's mental deterioration, whatever, is a fair question. It is not a quid pro quo for what happened with Biden. This is, if you saw this human being and said, what do you think is going on in terms of their ability to finish sentences, their ability to keep a linear chain of thought, the ability to answer questions, you would have doubts. His performance was damaging to him. It was weird.
I just want to ask you one question, because you're a security expert and you've dealt with a lot of these leaders. Yeah. The thing to me, and everybody's making jokes about it, I was making jokes about it, about that all these migrants were coming to America so they could eat the pets and the dogs and cats of families in Springfield, Ohio, that he seemed to really believe this. was so crazy. And you say to yourself, this is the man that could get us into a nuclear war. This is the man with so little judgment that he sees someone is so gullible that he sees somebody on television saying this, and he just says, oh, okay. I mean, that was what was really frightening to me in a very real way, and it put into
he's
context.
Not discerning. I mean, he's chosen it, though. I mean, in other words, he has chosen that his daily intake of information and news is going to come from this. It's not even Fox. People complain. This isn't Fox. This is like the sort of like, you know,
dregs of social media.
Yeah, dregs of social media. So you can't, like, you know, Fox hasn't exactly run with this, and one of the interesting things, you know, it's not just what his consumption is. It has to go with his curiosity. We know this. He's not a curious man. He doesn't care about specifics. When she opened with a laying out how she knew he would behave, and then, you know, she basically says, over the next hour and a half, he's gonna constantly go back to immigration, whatever, and then he did it. Right, like, so it's like, oh yeah, she did. This is typical. That was sort of a genius move on her part. I will say something in terms of his coherency, and he is in a very online world. You and I and Jim are on the online world. We knew what he was talking about because there had been enough debates online and whatever. But if your consumption is just the nightly news or maybe listening to local news, you had no idea what he was talking about. I'm with my parents here in LA. They're not online. They're not reading Twitter. They don't know the debates about, you know, Haitian immigrants eating dogs. So they were like
what is he talking about?
What is he talking about? Like, it's not even like this is true or not true, which is where J.D. Vance got himself all caught up. This is like, wait a second, I missed the intro. Like, I missed and Trump is so in his own world, he didn't know that most Americans had no idea what he was talking about.
I want to get to the comments she made last night about him in international affairs in a minute. But we cited an earlier poll, one of these flash polls from CNN, of the people who watched the debate, 63% thought that she had won. However, on the most important issue to voters around the country, the economy, we've mentioned several times that I think Marjorie shares my concern, that I was disappointed that she very clearly avoided answering the first question of the whole night. Are people better off in terms of the economy than they were 4 years ago? And CNN's flash poll after last night, despite the abominable performance by Trump, shows that their view of him on the economy has improved 2 points if you watch the debate, and their view of her, if you watch the debate on the economy, has gone down 2 points. So it's just a snap of view, but it is what it is. Here is part of what she said last night about foreign leaders. He goes on and on about Orban, who is obviously a strongman dictator in Hungary, who loving him and say he's the greatest. Here's what she had to say last night. I'm going to tell you, I have traveled the world. This is Harris, obviously, as vice president of the United States. World leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I've talked with military leaders, some of whom work with you. They say you're a disgrace. It is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. So there's his view via Orban. There's her view, as I just stated. Who's right in terms of how Trump is viewed by his former world leaders, fellow world leaders?
I mean, she was probably being gracious in terms of laughing at her. I mean, I think that there is also a considerable fear about him coming back on. Canada's preparing for it in terms of, and Mexico's preparing in terms of immigration, and NAFTA, NATO, and Ukraine are clearly preparing for the likelihood that, that he will have no guardrails, that he will want, he did not answer the question about, how should this war end? I mean, an American president should say this war should end with Russia back to its borders.
Can I interrupt you? He was asked specifically, I believe, by Lindsay Davis, or maybe it was David Muir, do you want to see Ukraine win this war? He never answered the question, except to say, I want the war over. Go ahead.
I want the war over.
I'm sorry.
And he says, so many people, he said millions, it's not millions, but he said so many people have perished. I was like, when did that guide you? But I think he doesn't know. he couldn't answer it because his true belief is he wants to strike a deal that benefits Russia and that Russia would still be in parts of Ukraine. I thought her move. So Trump often says the world is laughing at us. I thought her move to say they're laughing at you was very genius, because it makes it once again about Trump's national security and foreign policy, which is transactional, bilateral, and always about him, right? And I thought her bringing it back to him rather than some theory of we have to support Ukraine was exactly right, and a way to reflect it. And I think that was the moment. I can't remember what the order is, but there was a moment in the debate where you were sort of building up to it, where he got off the rails and could not get back on. He got back on the rails, I think, in his conclusion. And I think that theme is a good theme that he had in his conclusion. I mean, good theme if you are a Trump supporter, which is, why are you talking about everything that needs to be fixed? You've been the leader. You've been the vice president for 4 years. That, I assume, is what his people wanted him to do, but he can't do that. And that's why I think it's fair to talk about his mental and emotional stability at this stage in his life. But
so do I. Can I take that one step further beyond the fairness of that? And by the way, to the credit of the New York Times, their lead story yesterday morning online,
Peter Baker
was exactly what you suggested. But I'd go one step further.
I should say NPR, our mothership, NPR's 4 Takeaways has I think I forget who wrote it, but is number one is this has to be discussed. It's the only takeaway, which is his capacity to govern.
Well, a related question that we discussed the other day with Chuck Todd is I don't understand. I assume people know what the Goldwater rule is, and it was put in place by the American Psychological Association, I believe, around the time that Barry Goldwater ran for president. And the rule says that you can't, if you're in that profession, you can't diagnose a person who you have not personally seen, meaning you can't go on television, Jane Doe, shrink, and say, I saw Donald Trump at the debate last night, and he suffers from some sort of mental illness, etc.
Yeah.
I don't understand it at all. I would say, in light of the fact that we in the media suggest we know what's really in the mind of Biden and Vance and Harris and Trump on other things every single day, I don't understand why a fully accredited psychologist, psychiatrist, therapist cannot go on the air and say, I have not examined him personally. This is purely based upon my 32 years of experience and my having observed him in many settings over the past 8-9 years. Here is my conclusion. And if someone has a different conclusion, but I think not just cognitive decline, as you mentioned correctly, not just inability to be coherent and complete a sentence. It seems to me the whole issue of potential mental illness is fair game and important game for the American people to hear something about it. If you choose not to buy what people are selling, then you don't buy it, So in any case,
agree. I think it is. After the first debate with Biden, the media was ready to sort of throw him off, saying he can't do this, and
which is true,
right? And the Democrats responded. There's not that kind of cacophony because the party has no alternatives at this stage. In fact, I mean, it's not getting as much commentary, but. Like he basically said he doesn't talk to J.D. Vance. Like this is okay. Like we're
that was when he was asked when the questioner said J.D. Vance was talking about his willingness to support a national abortion ban. Yeah. Trump's response was, "I've really never talked to J.D. Vance."
Yeah,
that was pretty incredible.
And that's another question he did not answer. If you want clarity, Trump's answer to the national abortion ban, because of course he knows he can't have a good answer, right? His base wants a national abortion ban, was all equally incoherent. But to me, to me, this is like a no-brainer now, like because he's given us the evidence. It's not like we're guessing at this stage. In 90 minutes of evidence about cognitive capability by someone who wants to be the president of the United States, in the same way that if you saw physical deterioration, as we have seen with Biden. I mean, his walk became an issue to discuss how he walked. It is exactly right. To me, this is like a no-brainer at this stage.
But the only I want to move on from this, except, by the way, Vanity Fair is reporting Trump suggests he'll flee to Venezuela if Harris wins. He's claiming the South American dictatorship is safer than the U.S. One of the
it might be safer in terms of his court cases. We'd have to extradite him.
But the only response I want to give to you, and then let's talk about one other thing while you're with us, is Kamala Harris, I don't think, is in a position to raise those issues because she did the right thing as vice president, but not the credible thing when she went on CNN immediately after Biden's debate performance and defended it. And I understand there was no choice. The choice was not to do an interview, but it was not credible for her to suggest that he was competent and did well on a lot of things when anybody who was watching knew that this man couldn't run for president again. So if someone's going to raise those issues, at least in my opinion, it can't be her. You know, while you're with us, you've been on CNN, obviously nonstop.
Can I just say one thing? Yeah. Venezuela does not have an extradition treaty.
Oh, is that true?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it doesn't have a duly elected president either, so that's another reason.
Never get him on the stand.
No, but I mean, anyone who thinks that he has thought through the countries without extradition treaties, and Venezuela does not have one. So I'm just saying he's not as dumb as we think he is.
Okay, so
if that's what he's saying.
While you're here, you've talked a lot on CNN about these shootings. I want to focus a minute on the horror in Georgia. And the murders there. The New York Times had a really interesting piece the other day. We all know that the year before the shooting, the FBI questioned the father and the son about alleged online threats to do school shootings. They interviewed him. The father said, no, if it ever happened, I'd be really mad at him, etc. We know they then moved to another county. The information wasn't transferred. But the point of a really interesting New York Times piece a couple of days ago was, unless you've committed a crime that comes to light in those interviews, and unless they don't say this, but unless you're in a red flag state like us, where you can go to a court and say he's a threat, you have to take weapons away from his house or whatever, which you arguably could do here under the law here. How handcuffed are law enforcement people in situations like the one we saw?
Very. I mean, because he's a minor. And he is, and his guardian, his father in this case, is essentially vouching for him, not going to put him up. I've been thinking about. I'm, as you know, I'm a big fan of going after the parents. I'm a bigger fan of going after gun laws, but I do think some of these parents, Oxford, that we saw earlier, and in this case, really are. They're in the room with the kid as the kid's doing the shooting. So one way I want to maybe think about this in a gun culture, or I've been thinking about it, is, we take children away from parents all the time if the parents are a risk to that child. And maybe we should think, in very limited circumstances, I don't want to be, that if the parents' behavior poses a risk to other children through their own child, that would be a reason to be able to step in. We would have if the father were abusing him, we would have no problem stepping in and saying this is not a relationship that we're going to recognize as being sacrosanct. One way that I think about this in terms of giving authorities to get in is that what you have is a parenting practice that through that child is now a risk to other children. And in that way, I think authorities should be able to step in. So it has nothing to do with guns. It has nothing to do with there is just sufficient evidence to show that this parent is creating a killer. And that killer is killing children. So to me, this is, I'm favoring all children in this instance. And I think we have to be more aggressive in this. It's risky, but so, when authorities went after the Oxford parents. It was the first time that, you would blame the parents for the actions of the children, and everyone worried about the slippery slope. That was an easy case because
the Crumblies, a couple of months
ago.
the
Crumblies. Yeah. They were so horrible, right? Mm-hmm. This is also a similar case. This is really horrible, and I think we can, protect from the slippery slope in these instances, but there are just clear cases where the parent is aiding and abetting a child to be a mass murderer.
Juliette,
thank you very much.
I'll see you next week, and we feel better.
Say hi to your parents.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. They say hello. They're listening in the next room.
That's great.
Good.
That's great.
Yeah.
They're great.
I'll see you later.
I think I met both your parents. They're wonderful.
Yeah, they were
people.
there.
Yeah.
They were there. They'll be back. They are great.
Okay, great to see you.
Talk to you soon.
Speaking
Bye.
with National Security expert Juliette Kayyem. She's former Assistant Secretary for Homeland Security under President Barack Obama, the faculty chair of the Homeland Security Program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, the author of the best titled book I've ever encountered, The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters, which of course is where we are all living right now. Up next, a break from politics for a moment. Our food policy analyst, Corby Kummer, zooms in from Italy again. He's got a lot of good news, but some bad news about the cooking fumes and what it means to our health. You are listening to Boston Public Radio 89.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you and Boston South Visual Art Trail, including Edinburgh Arts Museum, the Art Complex Museum in Duxbury, Fullercraft Museum in Brockton, Plymouth Center for the Arts, and South Shore Art Center, Cohasset. BostonSouthVisualArtTrail.org. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion, with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Margery Egan. 50% of us, that would be half for the mathematically challenged, are at the Boston Public Library. Margery has COVID. She says she's doing well. It's great she's doing the show. But we are 100% streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Congresswoman Presley will join us about the debate in the 1 o'clock hour. I'm going to do something very dangerous, Margery, before we introduce our next guest. It would be really dangerous if the question was about me, but since it's about you, how many of you people in the audience here at the Newsfeed Cafe are disappointed that Margery is not physically here today? Oh, that's nobody. That's really sad.
Nobody. Oh, my goodness.
That's not one.
No one misses me.
Everybody, Margery, just raised their hand. Except Jamie. Jamie doesn't give a damn that you're not here. But he's entitled to his opinion. It's a free country. Say whatever you want. We're joined now, by the way, as Margery said, we decided we needed at least one break from the debate, and Corby Kummer is that break. At 1 o'clock, we'll return to take your calls and texts about all things debate, and then we'll conclude the show with Congresswoman Ayanna Presley giving us her 2 cents about what she thought about last night and what she thinks about the final 50-some days. We're joined now on Zoom by Corby Kummer, multiple James Beard Award winner, Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, Senior Editor at The Atlantic, and Senior Lecturer at the Tuss Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Where are you today, Corby Kummer? Well, that's working well.
We can't hear him.
Oh, where are you again? You got to say it again.
There he is.
Okay. Are you hearing me now?
Yeah, where are you?
I'm in a wonderful other country where they actually stayed up watching the debate till 5 a.m. last night because it's 6 hours ahead. And it's Italy. And the friends whose house I'm in right now got up at 3 a.m, watched the debate, and went to bed at 5. Because that's how much they care about that in this country.
Well, that's what your friends did. Did you do it too?
I had to teach for 5.5 hours this morning,
so
and no, I did not.
Okay.
Yeah. Then we will spare you. Right. We will spare you the question about what you thought. But what did your host think?
Everyone thought she was like a prosecuting attorney and kept getting him, and they were incredibly sensitive to things she said about race. So they loved it. I've been hearing different bits and pieces all day. So it's the talk of the international circles.
Corby, thanks for calling in.
So this is a real downer of a story. I mean, it's a frightening story about cooking smoke can kill millions of. It is killing millions of people every year. What is this all about?
Well, you know, Haiti and led the world and Africa have tried to lead the world in safe cook stoves. So first of all, It's a shocking statistic that more than half of the trees that are cut down for blue skies to try to convert to many more kinds of clean cooking fuel, including electric.
So does that have to do with the push for induction ovens? Because
that's a way step ahead. It does?
Yeah.
But also, think of it, New York City won't allow gas stoves in new construction, and it's entirely because of the fumes that are released from gas stoves. It's happening. It's already been happening by law, the move to electric stoves. And also, what's ahead of the world, what you were saying, Jim, is that there's so much of a push to get off the grid and have alternative forms of electricity. That kind of energy can be much more renewable in the long run for stoves and for cooking.
I am really embarrassed that I didn't know about how fatal this situation is in a third of the world. Is the rest of the world like us, which can afford not to have that kind of cooking indoors, helping to subsidize efforts in poorer countries to move away from this, or no?
To an extent, the United Nations has been doing stuff because when Jose Andres, he really got hip to this when he spent a lot of time in earthquake relief for Haiti. And he came to understand how much of a huge problem cook stoves were, and he started a whole international clean cook stoves program. And this was after the main earthquakes in Haiti, so it's at least 15 years ago. So there have been he's tried to line up U.S. aid for it. The United Nations has been trying to help this. But now there are new global efforts to try to bring awareness to the need for clean energy and human rights, really.
We're talking to Corby Kummer, who's host in Italy, cared enough about American democracy to get up in the middle of the night. He apparently did not, to watch a debate. Now, Corby, Marjorie,
yes.
You're not smiling, Corby. So, Marjorie, did you have Ivy Scott on the show when I was away one day?
Yeah, she was talking about
she was fabulous.
People who met in prison and couples, married couples, one in prison, one out. She was wonderful.
However, the reason I'm saying that is she wrote a piece that's actually important. 5 tips to keep your fridge food fresher, because obviously food waste is a real serious problem. However, it's not like groundbreaking stuff like her reporting that you described was. Keep older foods closest to the front so you remember to eat them first. Put certain things in colder parts of your refrigerator, other things in the warmer parts. I mean, this is a real serious issue because food waste is such a colossal problem. But is there a place you'd reference that might give people information that might not be quite as obvious as this, Corby Kummer? Okay, then.
Who is at the Center for Health Law and Policy Innovation, is quoted in this piece about how to reduce food waste. So keep your food fresher longer. Don't throw it out. Don't let it get out of the kitchen. And she was saying that the USDA has a really good Food Keeper app. So look up Food Keeper under the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and that has recommended storage times for dozens of foods. And I'm sure it has great storage tips for them, too. The one thing that I learned from this piece, aside from always being reminded, if you buy meat and chicken, keep it on the lowest shelf of your refrigerator because the packages drip.
Well, that was a good point. I take my criticism back. That was a good point.
They drip bacteria-filled liquid onto your fresh produce. And, you're half-opened the yogurt. So you want to keep food so it can't drip on anything. And the other was the idea that plastic food bags and produce bags, because they create moisture inside, they deteriorate the shelf life of your produce. So the idea is wet a paper towel and wrap your herbs and vegetables with moist paper towels because they breathe, they don't trap moisture, and yet they keep the parsley and such nice and moist without suffocating it and making it go moldy.
I take back my criticism. Actually, there were a couple of really important points in there.
Parsley in a long glass of water with a little covering over it. It lasts a really long time.
You should.
Celery too.
And the other is asparagus.
Asparagus, yeah.
And one of the tips that they had in this is keep carrots and celery half submerged in water or fully submerged in water. it's always a good tip because they're awfully crisp when you do that. So, there were lots of good tips in this piece. And another one was glass Tupperware as opposed to plastic. It really does keep food better and longer if you invest in glass refrigerator
And better
containers.
for the environment, obviously, to have the glass, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking to Corby Kummer from Italy.
Okay, let's talk about how hard it is to open an independent restaurant here in Boston. This is by Allison Arnett, food writer for years for the Globe.
Such a good piece in talking to restaurateurs. But, it sounds like there's a kind of halfway house for restaurateurs that's run by the wonderful Garrett Harker, who's not named in the piece, who's Eastern Standard Kitchen is hiring a lot of the chefs that Allison Arnett, longtime terrific writer and food critic for the Globe, talked to. So one of them is Charles Draghi, who had a terrific restaurant in Park Plaza that he managed to keep open for 10 years, but now it's condos because rent, because labor costs, and also the terrific chef of Jason Bond of Bondier in Cambridge, who did such innovative stuff and is also working on dinners occasionally for Garrett and Eastern Standard, who is named in Allison's piece. What they're saying is it's terrific that staff and labor get paid more after the pandemic. Don't begrudge that. It's a wonderful trend, but it makes it unaffordable for me. I can't find a place on the low margins that restaurants run on that will allow me to afford with my business model the costs of rent and labor, especially in Cambridge and Boston. And Charles Draghi made an interesting point, which is there's not enough live entertainment events to keep people coming in late at night to restaurants that were downtown like his. I was very interested in that point, and he was pointing, and Allison pointed to cities like Nashville, Denver, Detroit, that have more events that can keep a restaurant going at night.
Didn't Mayor Wu appoint a night czar or czarina or something to deal with nightlife? And I think she did. Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done. But go, what were you going to say?
And I think a big part of that is trying to get the Tea to stay open longer, which has been a push for years, because that will help people who work in restaurants get home after shifts.
Yeah, we discussed that with the general manager of the Tea on Monday, when he was with us for an hour. And he says they are talking about it. There have been some failed experiments, as Marjorie noted when Eng was here. They tried it a few years ago, and ridership was terribly low.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that the response to that was cancellation, but rather modification. And the point I was trying to make to Mr. Eng, which I don't think I made terribly well, is maybe some of the restaurants that are so hard up for workers could help subsidize whatever tea service there is late at night in their particular parts of the city. And obviously,
with the high profit margins that restaurateurs
maybe they'd have higher profit margins if more people came to their restaurants, Corby. So it's a financial... the one thing that has happened since we trashed this pathetic 5-month-a-year, every other year, vacation legislature, they did finally do 225 liquor licenses, many of them in underserved, lower income communities. And while most of them are not transferable, so they won't build wealth for the owners of those restaurants, they will at least give scores more restaurants the ability to have the profitable liquor license that so many of them don't have now. So that's a step, I think, in the right direction. We're talking to Corby Kummer.
And a good one.
It is a good one. So I love this story in the New York Times, the case for eating lunch with your colleagues. And the point that was made by Michael Snyder and Sean Danola, who wrote this thing, they talked to 6 people, the only one I've heard of who were leaders, Ava DuVernay, about how important the having lunch with your colleagues is, not just to build relationships, but to improve creativity and the quality of the work you do together. Okay, Mr. Food Professor, do you subscribe to the notion? Because I think it's great. Do you?
We always believe in gathering over the table, that the best relationships are made over food and over dinner. Here in Italy, the expression is non si invecchia a tavola, which means you don't get old at the table.
That's great.
It doesn't count toward aging because, you're always just building relationships. So a number of these creatives, that horrible term, the URL of the piece is creatives at lunch, New York Times. Yeah. So these people who are in the creative businesses, designers, movie directors, restaurateurs too in London, is that if you come together in the middle of a work day, you talk about work and you can skid from subject to subject. Even in a tense movie set where you've only got 30 to 60 minutes max, you get so much done in shorthand because you have to eat. It's better to do it with someone. And there's so many ideas. It's like one big pinball ricocheting hallway conversation that everybody advocating back to work in offices really want to advocate. And so I think that one take-home lesson you could take from this nice photo piece in the New York Times Style magazine is subsidize lunches once a month or every 2 weeks and tell people, not only do we, with a little bit of pressure, expect you to be back, we're going to give you some food and everybody's going to be more creative. It's always best to give people food in offices.
This is not quite as nice a spin on it as you are giving it. But do you remember when, well, it's not that it's changed totally, but when nobody wanted to come back to work in most of America, the stories in the newspapers were the only time that workers were willing to come back to work, at least for part of a day, was when they had free food. Which would lure me in.
I don't think it's changed that much.
Yeah, no, it obviously hasn't changed. Do you do that, Corby? And you have many hats, I should say, as evidenced by the introduction to your segment. Do you practice what the New York Times is preaching and you affirm, or no?
Well, yeah. I mean, any meeting I have, I will try to bring food. And in fact, even when I've only got my team of about 3 people coming in to the office, I always bring food. I mean, I don't believe you should ever meet with people without food.
I'm so with you.
But that's my own personal belief.
Corby, I would say that I have lunch with Jim Braude every day.
Oh, you do?
Except that he starts eating at 8:30 when we get there and eats continually until 2 o'clock. And the texters will say they can hear Mr. Braude munching again, and it upsets them, Jim.
One, I think they're talking about you. And 2, I do not start eating at 8:30. That's because you get here at 8:30. I start eating at 7 when I get here.
I stand corrected.
Until I leave at 2 o'clock.
He's got his 6 little Tupperware containers. It's really kind of organized.
No,
Someone say a little bit anal.
See, he has Tupperware containers.
It is anal when you're at the in Brighton, but when we are here at the Newsfeed Cafe, we partake of their wonderful food,
right.
Marge. Are you aware of that?
That's right, and they have a new Cobb salad in charcuterie
I'm eating it right
board.
now.
Yep, we've changed up for the fall. It's very exciting.
Very exciting. So, Corby...
But there's something new I think you need to do a show on, which is, what's the etiquette of eating on Zoom? I do it, and I feel really self-conscious because nobody else is doing it, and I feel like a jerk.
Oh, that's a very good point.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I agree that if you hear someone chewing in a microphone, which again is Marjorie, not me.
It's what are you talking about?
I'm trying to tell the truth here. I know it hurts, but it is true.
Okay.
Other than that, I am totally comfortable. If people are eating and their mouth isn't open, and I think that's totally fine. In our remaining minutes, this is a rather odd kind of story.
Yeah, but it's really important to know, not that I'm going to go climbing around in any caves anytime soon, but this is awful. What happened when the person that went to the Carlsbad Caverns National Park in New Mexico dropped some Cheetos?
Yeah, not some Cheetos, a whole bag.
Whole bag.
About half of what the Cheetos did was they created a huge picnic for the bacteria, protozoa, fungi, microbial life that is able to survive in caves. They are very tough critters. They are in the dark. They have very little air. They don't have much. They sometimes have water, but they don't have much food. And here with this feast, all kinds of other critters came in and completely disrupted the ecosystem of the caves. And so the people who worked there had to go with a little scraper in the caves and spend all of this time getting rid of all of the new life that sprung up because nothing else is going to nourish it, and also it could kill the old life. It was fascinating. Like, really watch out when you're in national parks. Obey the signs about nothing more than water.
You know, and the reason, just so I'm clear, the reason this had just one bag of Cheetos allegedly had such a profound impact on the Carlsbad Caverns is because, I'm assuming, because other, what do you call it, nutrients are in such short supply? Is that why they have such a profound impact? Is that it?
So.
It is? Corby?
Well, every drop nutrient is going to attract lots of everything that will, look at mice and rats in urban neighborhoods and trash. Bears too, but the idea that they could find it and get into these otherwise completely inaccessible places, came as a surprise, but it just should make you think about all of the unintended damage you can do when you go tromping into the wilderness.
What do you think would happen, Marjorie, if we dropped a bag of Cheetos right here at the Newsfeed Cafe? What do you think the reaction would be?
I think you would eat them.
I would. That is, thank you. Well, the 5-minute rule, you know me and that 5-minute rule.
It's supposed to be the 5-second,
well,
but Jim has enlarged it from 5 second to 5 minutes.
5 seconds for you, my friend. So, Corby, did you tell us before you go, did you tell us why you're in Italy?
I'm teaching at the University of Gastronomic Sciences, which was started by Slow Food, and it's a fantastic international program with fabulous students.
It's fabulous. Well, it's great you called in. It was very kind of you. Tell your hosts that we're really proud of them. Do you not find, and Corby, you're a better one to answer this than Marjorie or I, in our limited travels to Europe, I know Marjorie's encountered this, how embarrassing is it that most European adults with whom you have, not just Europe, I've been to China a lot, China know more about American politics in detail
that's almost everywhere you
than
go.
Americans do. Do you encounter that,
It's
Corby?
not only that, the other end of the statement is they have been to more states than you. They know America better.
That's right. No, it's really embarrassing, and they know our history better. It's very embarrassing. That happened to me particularly when you're in a cab in Ireland, the cab driver can give you the whole, every detail, and I'm sitting there saying, "Oh, I didn't know that."
That's nice to know.
It's very
Corby,
embarrassing.
It's wonderful to see you. Thanks for calling in from Italy.
Thank you,
Have
Corby.
a safe trip. See ya.
Thank you.
Corby Kummer.
We've been speaking with Corby Kummer, Executive Director of the Food and Society Policy Program at the Aspen Institute, a senior editor at The Atlantic, and a senior lecturer at the Tufts Friedman School of Nutrition, Science, and Policy. Corby, thank you very much. Have a great time in Italy. Coming up, it is our text question of the day. They made it to climate change at last night's debate, the last few seconds. But were you left wanting more from Harris and Trump? And the moderators, you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Diane Paulus, the Tony-winning artistic director of the American Repertory Theater, and theater legend actor Terrence Mann join us to talk about Romeo and Juliet. Now on stage at the ART, this is a production that focuses on the star-crossed lovers' love rather than the frenzy of feuds all around them. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for our programs comes from you. And Revision Energy. Sunbug Solar is now part of Revision Energy, a solar installer committed to being a renewable energy partner for New England and working to fight climate change. Learn more at sunbugsolar.com. And Concord Park, a Volunteers of America senior community in Concord, Mass., offering seniors the privacy and independence of their own apartment home, as well as care and support to help meet their needs now and as they age. ConcordPark.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I am Jim Browdy. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. I am physically here in Marjorie's home. She's got COVID, but she's doing quite well. Congresswoman Presley, Ayanna Presley, joins us in the 1 o'clock hour to talk about the debate last night. And we're going to return to a conversation with you in the 1 o'clock hour before the Congresswoman joins us about that debate. When ABC's Lindsay Davis at 10:35 last night, that was 5 minutes before the end of the whole debate, posed the question about the climate to Trump and Harris, she couched the issue on the shoulders of younger voters, saying it's an issue that's particularly important to them, which is, of course, true. But aren't we so far beyond the next generation being affected when it comes to climate change? Meaning, doesn't it matter to everybody? The data suggests that tens of thousands of people across the world died last year alone due to extreme weather and natural disasters. Scientific consensus, as I hope you all know, is clear these events are worsening directly in relation to changing climate. Here's a little bit of what Trump didn't have to say, but whatever. And then Harris's answers to the climate change question.
You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs.
Obviously, he said nothing about it at all. She said that he had called it a hoax, but they discussed fracking last night, which is obviously the antithesis of climate concerns, and they did the climate themselves. What do you think, and what do the texters think?
Well, speaking of young people, here's Jean, who says, we young people need not hold the VP hostage over climate change. Her administration will go full force once in. What is the alternative? We sit in the sidelines or vote for a third party and Trump wins? We need to think about the country. It's baby steps. And here's an anonymous texter. Climate change is real and important, but I am worried about what can happen today, like the threat of aliens eating my beloved pets. And then here's an anonymous texter. On climate change, it's been driving me nuts for a long time that no one, even Harris, ever talks about it. At her DNC speech, she didn't mention it at all. Why? Last night was no different. She did remind people that he previously said climate change was a hoax, but that was it. And he, of course, veered off into Neverland. But is it the way to win back the young voters who've run away from the Democrats because of the Gaza issue? Why don't the Dems get that? Are they so afraid of the fossil fuel companies?
I think that's a great text, by the way.
Yeah,
that's
great. We have a lot of great texts.
And she did mention that he said it was a hoax. She didn't get to him purportedly asking oil executives, CEOs, for $1 billion in return for which he'd do whatever they wanted with fossil fuels. But can we spend a minute doing what either Kamala Harris didn't have time to do or whatever? The Inflation Reduction Act was the single largest expenditure to address climate change, I think, in world history. $369 billion in new spending for clean energy projects. 85% of all investments have gone to Republican-controlled congressional districts. I think that might have been mentioned. Electric vehicle tax credits, up to $7,500 to purchase a new EV. $2 billion for renewable energy systems and energy efficiency improvement grants in rural areas. I was really I thought the moderators did a great job last night. I think leaving climate change to the end and suggesting they didn't say it in these words, but that it's really only a critical issue for young people, gave it too much short shrift or too little shrift or something.
I'm not young.
Like
I'm
that.
hysterical about it. $4.5 billion to help low and middle income households adopt equipment like heat pumps, water heaters, insulation, air heating. $4.3 billion for energy saving retrofits for single family and multifamily households. There's all this stuff. You know, one of the most encouraging things about climate change, and you've heard many people say this, is that the economics of it are going to take over the politics of it.
Bill McKibben is great at that.
Yeah, I hope that's really true. And it's ironic that Texas has as many solar panels and wind farms as it does, because Perry, that used to be the governor there, ran for president years ago. You may remember him.
Secretary of Energy, wasn't he?
That's right. I don't know whether he's secretary.
He was.
He forgot the places he wanted to get rid of. Remember, he was trying to get rid of 3 big departments.
Romney had to help him out in the debate, remember?
But anyway, under his governorship, they put a lot of alternative energy into Texas. And, you know, there's a lot of question about Texas, the grid surviving when they have these terrible hurricanes or these unexpected freezes in the middle of winter. Oh, my goodness. It's
Jamie reminds me the one department he wanted to get rid of that he forgot and was reminded by Mitt Romney on the stage was energy. And that's the department that he ended up running under Donald Trump.
Okay. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to talk with Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, and we'll open the lines again to talk more about last night's debate. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We're broadcasting Lee's Jim.
Coverage on a wide range of information so you can stay informed and engaged in our local community. We depend on listener contributions to keep this quality reporting going. Support your listening by pitching in at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you. And The Huntington, presenting Tom Stoppard's Leopoldstadt, a stirring and epic story of love, family, and enduring bravery set in Vienna at the rise of the 20th century. September 12th through October 13th at the Huntington Theater, huntingtontheater.org. And Rockland Trust Bank, committed to helping individuals and local businesses work towards their financial goals by providing financial advice and resources. More at rocklandtrust.org. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. We'll speak with Massachusetts Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley for her thoughts on last night's debate between a former prosecutor, VP Harris, and a current felon. That would be Donald J. Trump. And we'll come back to you. Did you watch the debates? Were you encouraged by what you saw? Are there issues you felt got skipped over? And do you want to see Harris and Trump return to the debate stage before November? Or are you ready for all this?
In Shanksville, a short time ago, President Biden and Vice President Harris laid a wreath at the memorial site for the passengers and crew aboard Flight 93 that was hijacked and crashed into a field. Former President Donald Trump was also expected to visit Shanksville. Earlier, Harris and Trump attended a commemoration at Ground Zero. They were seen shaking hands the morning after their contentious exchange on a debate stage in Philadelphia. Trump and Harris sparred in that debate last night over several issues that included immigration, a key topic in the campaign. NPR's Sergio Martinez Beltran has more.
During the 90 minutes the presidential debate lasted, Trump used a racist narrative about migrants being criminals, but studies show migrants commit fewer crimes than U.S.-born people. He claimed Haitian migrants in Ohio are eating pets. There's no evidence of what he's accusing them of doing. As for Harris, she blamed Trump for killing a bipartisan border deal, something he takes credit for, and she dodged a question about why the Biden administration waited so long to implement policies to lower the number of unauthorized crossings at the U.S. southern border. Harris did not provide any details about her plan to reform the immigration system. Sergio Martinez Beltran, NPR News, Austin.
Hurricane Francine is bearing down on the Louisiana coast with winds of 90 miles per hour. It became a Category 1 hurricane last night. NPR's Debbie Elliott reports it was on a UN school housing Palestinians displaced by war. The Israeli military says it was targeting Hamas militants suspected of planning attacks from inside. It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. 14 months after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Harvard and other colleges can't consider race in admissions, the decision's impact is becoming apparent. From our higher ed desk, GBH's Kirk Carapezza reports that black enrollment at the university dropped 4 percentage points this fall.
Harvard's class of 2020 includes more than 1,600 students, and notably, 14% identify as African American or black, down from 18% last year. Hispanic or Latino students saw a slight increase, rising to 16% from 14%. Meanwhile, Asian American students continue to make up 37% of the incoming class. Kirk Carapezza, GBH News, 89.7.
Voter turnout for the September 3rd primaries in Massachusetts was 16.6%, so says the Office of Secretary of State Bill Galvin. The 16.6% translates to more than 841,000 voters. Past elections have had much lower turnout, but others have far surpassed it. Galvin says this year's number could have to do with the lack of high-interest races locally, statewide, and nationally. And in sports, the Red Sox-Orioles wrap up their 3-game season.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Charles Schwab, offering investors choices like full-service wealth management, advice, investing, and trading on thinkorswim. Learn more at schwab.com. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Welcome back to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. And Jim is broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library. Unfortunately, I have COVID, so I'm at home. Hi, Jim.
And you're good. For those who are concerned, which I think is everybody, if you really feel well, or are you just being courageous?
No, I like I said, I'm surprised, but I've had so many shots and boosters. I think that's what they do. They help you. You may still get COVID, but you won't get very sick, so I shouldn't get ahead of myself. But so far, so good.
You know, one of the things I've always admired about you, I've said this on the air, and I feel it's a good time to say it. When you do broadcast from home, the fact that you're able to do a really good show and bake a cake is like incredible. Are you baking today, or is COVID inhibiting your ability to cook?
But you know what I just did during the news?
No, I do not.
My monitor and my Zoom went out, and I fixed it myself.
No, you did not.
Yes,
is that really true?
I'm very proud of myself.
Okay, so we decide, which we rarely do, that last night was so important. We don't know what the impact on the race is going to be, but so important, I think we'd all agree, as a moment in this campaign, first and maybe only encounter between Trump and Harris. Harris has said she wants another debate. We'll see what Trump said. It's unlikely, but we don't know what's going to happen in October. That we would spend more time getting your thoughts on text and the phone at 877-301-8970. But what you thought about the debate, what do you think the impact will be? Who do you think the winner was? Should there be a second debate? You know, one of the things, Marjorie, that we did not spend time on at all was a reflection on Trump's comment at the National Association of Black Journalists that all of a sudden Kamala Harris turned black a bunch of years ago. Here is him responding to a question from David Muir about his claims about Harris's race. We don't have it. Okay, well, let's not do it then. Our number is 877-301-8970 is our phone number. Do you want to make a reference to cats and dogs before we get to the calls and the texts? Because that seems to be your obsession today.
Yeah, that's right. I'm wondering what the people of America are doing to keep their dogs and cats safe from people who just arrived here from other countries who may be trying to eat them for dinner. You know, it makes you a little concerned if you are a dog or cat owner. What should you do? And if you went on Twitter last night, you saw these cats and dogs running for their lives ahead of people coming to get them to eat.
By the way, can we do a serious part of this? By the way, we're making light of this fact. We did mention earlier that they're endangering the lives of Haitians. Did you know who this Nathan Clark is, the father of the 11-year-old boy in Springfield, Ohio? I think people know. His death actually did come at the hands of an immigrant with legal status in a car crash. Had virtually nothing to do with these false claims about Haitians. But here's part of what Nathan Clark, again, the father, had to say, which shows the impact of these irresponsible public statements on real people.
I wish that my son, Aiden Clark, was killed by a 60-year-old white man. I bet you never thought anyone would ever say something so blunt. But if that guy killed my 11-year-old son, the incessant group of hate-spewing people would leave us alone. Politicians, Bernie Moreno, Chip Roy, J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump, they have spoken my son's name and used his death for political gain.
That is really courageous statement from a grieving father, I'll tell you.
It is courageous. And you know, I mean, you can't imagine losing a child. It's the worst thing that could possibly happen. But Trump over and over and over again portrayed desperate people coming to this country as horrible people, criminals, drug addicts, all these terrible things. And the most crime in America is committed by people who live here, were born here, they're Americans. It's not by people that come over the border, the percentage of people who do that kinds of things. But
we should be clear about that. The crime rate of immigrants, legal or otherwise, is lower, as you say, than citizens. And to the credit, when he said the country is as violent as it's ever been, more actually last night, yet again, Lindsay Davis corrected him respectfully and I thought calmly and said FBI statistics suggest that is not true, that violent crime is down.
But one thing I have to ask you, because I'm not there with you, is we don't have the clip on Trump and race yet, do we?
We do. They were just having a technical problem.
Yeah,
here it is.
Because we neglected to point out something really important that Trump did last night to Harris, and here you'll hear it.
I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her.
She put out.
I don't think that means what you think it means, and what texters are saying.
I think it certainly does, because there's been a lot of talk about how she had a romance years ago with the former mayor of San Francisco.
Yeah.
The implication was that she had, this is something as old as the ages, slept her way to the top. I think he knew exactly what he was saying.
He did do he reposted a social media comment about, if I may, fellatio. In terms of Hillary Clinton and how it hurt her husband's engagement with Lewinsky, and how he alleges it helped Harris. But I have to say, in fairness, we can have a different opinion. I think when he says where she was not black, that she put out, I think he means the notion that she put out. But obviously most of our texters and you feel differently. In any case, your thoughts, anything about the debate is fair game until we're joined by Congresswoman Presley. Alan on the road, you are next on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Alan.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Excellent.
I watched the debate last night. I thought Harris did very well. I thought Trump did exactly how he was going to do anyway. But I'm filled with almost like a grief and a sadness after watching the debate, because no matter what happened last night, no matter how many lies he spewed, no matter what kind of ridiculous statements he made, almost half the country is going to vote for him anyway, in spite of the outrageous lies and things that he says.
Well, we don't know that yet. I worry about the same thing, that there's nothing he can do or say, no matter how horrible it may be, that would cause anybody to decide not to vote for him. But we don't know. Alan, I think you know from listening to the show, and Marjorie does too, that was a pretty dominant performance last night, and a rather scary performance, both in terms of content and coherence by Donald Trump. So I'm hoping that this is a moment, not where it's going to cause 10 million people to flip, but maybe some people in the margins, which could change the outcome of this election. We'll see. Alan, thanks.
Yeah.
There are no polls yet, by the way, other than these flash polls, as I said, where CNN did a poll that showed actually he picked up a few points on the economy, and she dropped a few points on the economy based on last night.
Right, but their initial poll, and you can't make too much of this because it was right after the debate, showed her winning last night by as much as it showed Biden losing.
That's exactly
in June.
right. That's
I thought that was really interesting. And the caller said, I don't have the call screener today, unfortunately, but the gentleman who just called, I think Alan is feeling the way a lot of us are feeling, that there seems to be nothing that dissuades Trump's most ardent supporters. On the other hand, as Matt Bai wrote in the New York Times, he used to be with the Globe, by the way, that what she had to do was get the people that are on the fence, people that are either Nikki Haley voters, or they're much more conservative Democrats that don't like someone that they worry is too liberal, or people who are really worried about the economy. She had to convince those people, because he already has his people, obviously, and she has most Democrats, because where are they going to go? But the middle people are the ones she had to get. And maybe I don't know if she did, but I hope she did.
Can I tell you something else? I've thought a lot about this, and this may be wishful thinking. Even if the immediate impact is not immense, I think the cumulative impact of a person who, even if you disagree with on some policy prescriptions, will bring some level of calm and normalcy back to America compared to what it was like 4 years ago. I think cumulatively over time, that's going to have an impact on. Do I really want to go back to this? Do I really want to debate whether or not Donald Trump won the election in 2020 or not? So I am actually in a rare optimistic mood. Who knows? Let's go to Nancy in Cambridge, joined with Marjorie Egan and me, Jim Browdy. Hi. Nancy. Hi, Nancy.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
You called us. You know that, right?
Yes.
Okay, you're on.
Nancy.
Take it away.
I just wanted to say I like how the debate went, but I'm just disturbed that Kamala Harris is being marketed as an African-American woman, and it really is disturbing. I know she did go to an African-American school, an HBCU. I know she did pledge AKA, which is an African-American sorority, but it just seems very, very dishonest the way she's being marketed.
Who is being... Wait. Nancy, she's almost never mentioned her race, and I have to say, I'm sure there are accounts that mention them. I don't see that as a major theme.
Are you saying that the Indian part of her heritage is not mentioned, or that no part of her heritage is mentioned?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I don't think she's marketed as an Indian American. She's marketed as an African American, which is their choice to market her. But she did a good job last night.
Well, I respectfully, Nancy, I don't think I assume you mean her campaign, are marketing her as a person of color at all. In fact, I think what people have read is they think it's pretty obvious when you look at the two candidates. One's younger, one's a person of color, and it doesn't need to be said. But we're respectfully, Nancy, we disagree. But thank you very much for your thoughts. Am I wrong? I mean, have you seen?
I think she's been nominated as someone, a biracial. She's South Asian.
When have you heard her talk about race?
Black.
Other than when
and
she
she's
talks
not
about
African
her
American.
sisters?
Well, I don't think she's been called African American at all, really, because she's not African American. Her father was from Jamaica, so she's a black woman with Caribbean heritage. But I think she's done it. But was it Barack Obama that said, when there was all the dispute about his being biracial, the son of a white mother and stuff, that when he was looking for a cab, everybody knows what his race is?
I think it was.
I mean, she's a dark-skinned woman, so I think that if you're a Caribbean black person, black people there's racism against black Americans, whether you're African American or Caribbean American, I think.
But I guess the point that I was reacting to that Nancy said, she used the word several times, she's being marketed. I assume that means by her people, those who do marketing, and I simply haven't heard that, but maybe she has and I've missed it. John in Westford, hey.
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon.
And to you.
Hi, I watched it on TV. My wife listened to it on the radio on the treadmill. My mother watched it in her home, and my son watched it at college. Okay. And we were all texting each other in real time.
And
we all had totally different opinions of what was happening. And we're all politically exactly the same. We're all conservative. And
That's
one
great.
person is saying, oh, Trump hit it out of the park. The other one's saying Kamala's killing it. It was, so I kind of walked away. The only thing we agree on was her hair. Her hair was incredible. But
I can't believe you beat Marjorie to saying that, by the way.
Okay, elaborate. What was so incredible about her hair?
Fabulous. Let's face it,
well,
she
she's
looked
a
great.
good-looking woman, which doesn't hurt.
But go ahead, John.
Yeah, the shine, the highlights. I mean, you can tell I have a lot of girls.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I want to get back to Trump killed it or Trump is fabulous or whatever, one of your family members. Flesh that out a little bit. Whoever said that, you or your kid or your spouse, how is he fabulous?
Well, a lot of it was, I'm trying to view it, from the other side.
It's
exactly
fine.
why I listen to your show and call in.
No, we love when you
I'm having
call.
trouble, but he'll say something and it's like a missed opportunity. You know what I mean? There's so many things. He just, like, if he threw out some stats and some numbers on the economy when he took office and right up until COVID, that would have definitely helped. The dog thing, I wish he started with the pigeons and the ducks. It is going on. I know that guy, the town guy, spoke out against it, but they have body cam footage from police officers, and they have found cats, and there are a lot of
John, respectfully, they do not. There are no credible accounts of immigrants stealing pets and consuming them. There just aren't. I'm sorry.
I think there was one guy that was carrying a dead goose down the street, and then it kind of took off from that.
Hey, John, thank you. By the way, encourage your family members, well, you say everybody leans conservative. Encourage your family members to call us. We'd love to talk and tell them that they're related to you. We'd love to talk to them.
But you know what I wanted to?
Thank you for your call.
No,
before you
go, I'm interested. Was it the kids that were the conservatives or the grown-ups that were the conservatives?
They're all the conservatives.
Oh, they're all conservatives. Okay.
Yeah, he just had a different perspective on the debate.
Okay.
John, thanks as always. We appreciate your call. 877-301-8970 is the number. Bob, you're in Boston. Hi there.
Hey there.
Hi.
So, couple things. My comment on the debate is, in terms of having a second one, is I do not think there should be another one. I don't think you'll get a better result than we had last night. Mm-hmm. And I think Trump gets so many hall passes that if he was even able to string together a couple of sentences, he'll everybody, the bar is so low for him that everybody will be like, oh, wonderful, he did amazing. So I think one and done is the way to go. I had another comment on Kamala's lack of specifics on various policies. I mean, it seems to me that on immigration, an easy answer, and maybe it's not a political slam dunk, but my plan is on day one, I'm gonna meet with Democratic senators and we're gonna reintroduce the bill that Trump killed.
Yeah,
it was a bipartisan bill, and that's the plan. It's easy to understand. I know that bill was a little more conservative than a lot of people liked, but at this point, we'll see what the polls say. But it seems like at this point, people need to hear more details and specifics about a plan, and that just seems like a pretty good idea to me.
I love that idea. Before you go away, I was thinking a lot last night before I went to sleep about why she proposed a second debate. And the only things I can figure is, one, she was confident he would say no, and two, and look weaker. And so far he said it's unlikely. And the second reason is I think her people are probably telling her the truth, which is this is going to be a really close race regardless of last night, that the American people have the attention span of a gnat, meaning it's going to be forgotten, most of it, maybe not the cats and dogs, in a few days. And she's confident enough that she could do it again, that maybe closer to the election helps the cause. So while I generally agree with you, I think there may be some method to her thinking. Bob, thank you very much for the call. How do you feel about a second debate there, Marjorie Egan? Can't take it?
No. Well, I was very nervous yesterday.
So was I.
I think, as the caller just said, I mean, it'd be hard to top what she did last night. It wasn't perfect, obviously. She did evade some questions, but it was so domineering, and I think made him, like I said before, look so unhinged and frightening that I think it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter, except as a political ploy where she can say he's afraid to debate me again.
877-301.
What do you think?
8970. I don't know what I think. I mean, my initial reaction was it was such thorough domination that you can't really improve. But as I said a minute ago, our attention spans are brief. She's going to have bad days in the next month. And it's hard to watch last night and think that Donald Trump could ever improve much, even though intellectually I think he would understand, I can't take the bait, I can't do this. He is who he is. And so I guess if I were a decision maker, which thankfully I'm not, I'd say 51-49, do it again. Do you have texts you're looking at?
A couple of texters are wondering if the whole dog eating situation explains why the Trumps do not have a dog at the White House. Perhaps it meant an untimely demise. I think he's the only president, or one of the only presidents ever, not to have a dog.
Well, not to have some kind of pet. Some have had non-dog kinds of pets. But this is because Marjorie is ill, even though she doesn't feel ill, what she's basically been hoping I would do is play the sound again without her having to ask. And I think on behalf of all the people who love you and miss you, here is a clip of Trump once again last night in the middle of a debate to be the leader of the free world. Reed does that insane thing about Haitian immigrants in Ohio abducting and eating pets. Here it is.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets there. And this is what's happening in our country.
ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So
again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
Yeah, I'd say that's the case.
Okay,
so there
but
you go, Marjorie.
You know, nonetheless, the Attorney General of Ohio, who is a Republican, is apparently launching an investigation into the pet eating
Why
claims.
wouldn't he?
Why wouldn't he?
Yeah, exactly. 877-301-8970. John and Peabody, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. How you doing?
Excellent.
Jim, Bill indulge me just a couple of minutes here, a couple of points, and I want your opinion on something.
Sure.
I thought Kamala did well last night. I thought she held her ground well. I think to a certain degree her hands are tied because with such a short stint coming in here, she's part of an administration that she has to back policies on and so forth, even if she doesn't agree with them all the way.
I agree.
So when they say, you know, she didn't do this, she didn't do that, she didn't accomplish this, she didn't accomplish that, well, she's not the boss. She's not the final say that puts the policies in place either. So, you kind of have to, she's kind of, I think, hand-tied a little bit there. In another respect, I mean, look who she's going against, Marjorie. I hate to break it to you. He's not unhinged. He is bat-ass crazy. and why, never mind jail, why this guy isn't in a rubber room beyond me. And my question for you guys is, did you notice, I mentioned it to my wife, Lindsay Davis, after every time Trump went off on one of his tangents, looked like she was ready to jump out of her skin. She looked like she wanted to just jump up and scream at him. And I just wondered if you noticed that same body language or thought the same thing.
I have to say for myself, I thought the exact opposite. I thought that she did interject quite a bit. I was stunned by how calm and expressionless her interjections were, but obviously you saw them differently. Break the time, Marjorie. What do you think of Davis's moderation?
What I thought mostly was that they were very subdued, straightforward, serious. You didn't see either of them crack a smile at some of the weirder moments of the debate. So I thought they were pretty good. They had been criticized by Trump's camp for not fact-checking Harris, but she didn't say the kind of outrageous things Trump did about people executing babies and eating dogs. So I think that I was glad that they did step in, unlike in the CNN debate when they did not.
Yeah, and you raised a really interesting point, John, about, as has been said repeatedly on CNN, I think it's David Axelrod, no one ever said it was the Pence administration during Donald Trump. She's only vice president. Right. But in all fairness, there were a lot of things that were the doing of Biden that she claimed credit for last night. I would do the same thing were I running as a vice president for president, but she is attempting to have it both ways, and I think she's frankly doing it fairly skillfully, but she is trying to have it both ways. John, thank you. We appreciate your call. 877-301-8970. By the way, a colleague of ours, I don't know who did this, the origins of this claim about the pet eating thing came from a Springfield, Ohio neighborhood Facebook post where someone wrote about their missing cat. It was later found hanging from a tree, quote, near a Haitian person's house. And now it's part of the agenda of one of the two people who wants to be president of the United States, which is it's just unbelievable. And by the way, it's no coincidence in my estimation that he decided to repeat a story that involves Haitians, because we know Norway is a wonderful place and all those African countries are S-hole countries. I think it sort of fits his views about race.
There was also the picture that went viral of the man carrying, looks like a dead goose or a dead duck. And that seemed to be kind of the beginning of things going off the rails.
We have to take a break, Marjorie.
Yeah, we'll find out. I'm sure there's going to be the Attorney General's investigating, so we'll get to the bottom of this whole dog-eating tragedy out there in Springfield, Ohio. I'm sure in the next couple of days. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, Diane Paulus, the Tony-winning artistic director of the American Repertory Theater, and theater legend actor Terrence Mann join us to talk about Romeo and Juliet. Now on stage at the ART, this is a production that focuses on the star-crossed lovers' love rather than the frenzy of feuds all around them. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com. And Addison Gallery of American Art, presenting 3 new exhibits this month: Americans in Paris, K Walking Stick, Hudson River School, and Figure Ground, with an opening reception Saturday the 21st. AddisonGallery.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are talking to you about last night's terribly important debate, possibly the only debate in the first meeting ever between Harris and Trump. We expect to be joined in a bunch of minutes by Ayanna Pressley before the end of the show, Congresswoman Pressley, so we can get her reaction to what happened tonight. One of our colleagues had a very insightful thing about the thing that Marjorie is obsessed with, the pet eating issue. The only person in this election likely to have actually been involved in eating a pet is RFK Jr., which I think is a very,
he posted
very
the
fun
picture.
point.
Remember, he was with some woman, I don't know who it was, showing this like a dead dog, and faking how he was biting into it. And then, of course, he had that other strange thing where he picked up a dead baby bear cub, on the side of the highway, and then put it in his car and drove it to New York City and left it in Central Park. Speaking of which, they did talk about the Central Park 5 last night. Trump putting the full page ad in the New York Times that they should be executed. And one of those Central Park 5, and they were later exonerated, of course. It was a city councilor, I believe, in the city of New York, and he was in the spin room last night.
Well, in addition to everything else, and the point is, for those who've missed that, he did take a full-page ad out saying they should get the death penalty, these kids. It turns out when they were exonerated, of course, he never said that he was wrong. And what he also said last night, which is not the biggest thing in the world, is that their victim was killed. I actually interviewed the victim on New England Cable News when I was there, so she is very much alive and an incredibly strong person, because even though the Central Park 5 was not responsible for the assault, someone else was. We're taking your thoughts until Congresswoman Pressley joins us about last night and what you think lies ahead. And you were in Michigan. Oh, Michigan. Critical state, obviously. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi.
You got to turn down your radio, please. Hi.
I'm a strong supporter of Kamala Harris.
Yep.
But I was disappointed that she wasn't more specific, kind of like your past callers said. My expectations for her were higher and my expectations for Trump were lower.
Well, I have to say, I was disappointed that she didn't directly answer the first question, as I've said, about whether people were better off vis-a-vis the economy today than 4 years ago. I think there was a good and correct answer that a lot of people are, but sadly some people aren't. She was going to focus on them. But you can't say she didn't have detail on the economic front. After she didn't answer that first question, she went into what was at least 4 or 5 programs, from first-time home ownership to small business creation, and a whole host of things that I thought were quite specific. But you're not alone in your frustration, Ann. A lot of people feel she didn't fill in enough blanks. I think, other than evading a question or two, she actually did. But Ann, thank you very much for the call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970. What are you laughing about?
One of the texters just reminds us that 2 of Donald Trump's wives are immigrants. Ivana, his first wife, was an immigrant, and Melania was an immigrant, which is kind
very good point.
Interesting. Anyway. Next call, Jim.
Thank you, I will. The reason Marjorie's saying that, by the way, even though it's not just the desire to order me around, which she gets off on, but she
Kamala
does not
inspired
have
me, Jim.
a screen with the callers at home today. Janice, you're in Worcester. You're on Boston Public Radio. We appreciate your call. Hi.
Hi. First time, long time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyway, I just wanted to say that when it seemed to me, my perception during the debate last night was when Trump was trying to distance himself from the January 6th rioters, the language he used actually framed it as a we, them. So he was definitely identifying with them, even though he was trying to distance himself from it. So I thought that was a pretty telling tell.
Well, as you know, he thinks they're hostages. He said he'll consider pardoning many of them on the first day that he takes office, should he win. And with a lot of his rallies, he plays the Star-Spangled Banner as performed by people who have been convicted of engaging in activity related to trying to overthrow the government of the United States. And thank you much for the call.
But he
Marjorie,
said also, Jim, that he had nothing to do with it. They just asked him to come give a speech, and he came and gave a speech. He had nothing to do with January 6th, even though he watched it on television for between 2 and 3 hours, after his family even pleaded with him to intervene as the police officers were being beaten and dragged about the Capitol.
By the way, I'm sorry. You
Go ahead.
finish. I thought you were done there.
No, until he I think he did it. Was it 3 hours in or something like
2
that?
hours, I think, or something, but hours. And, a couple of things also. It's very clear how nervous the Trump side is about Project 2025, because one of the few things he is unequivocally unambiguous about is how he has nothing to do with it, even though he has everything to do with it, as we know. And the guy who wrote it talked about meetings with Trump early on and approval, not to mention 100+ Trump former staffers were involved. J.D. Vance was involved early on. But did you hear the statistic? I think it was on CNN last night. A majority, I think it's 60-some% of the American people say they're familiar with Project 2025, which I thought was really heartening, by the way, because it's not that it's not important, but it is not exactly something you think the average busy person in this country could make a connection to. Do you?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the abortion stuff is pretty frightening. The birth control stuff is pretty frightening.
Maybe that's it.
The idea that, as was pointed out last night by Kamala Harris, that some of these very conservative Republicans want to track people's miscarriages and pregnancies, get women's medical records, so that if a woman goes out of state to get an abortion, she can be prosecuted for that. I mean, it's just, I think, most of us think contraception is a pretty good idea, Jim. Don't you think?
I think most people do, of all political stripes, by the way. Let's go to Providence, where Joanne joins us on Boston Public Radio. Hi, Joanne.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you.
It's so
Marjorie's
good
here,
to
too.
talk to both of you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Marjorie, I hope you feel better.
Thank you. I feel pretty good. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but so far, so good.
Thanks. What's up?
Good. The reason I'm calling is I thought she did a great job. I was very glad to see that she kind of renewed my faith in what's going on here after what happened with Biden. But the one thing I think she should have been more aggressive as to pinpointing this when he keeps denying about 2025, that he doesn't know anything about it. It's obvious that, of course, he does, and I think she should have been more aggressive in pointing out the reasons why it was obvious that he does know about it, and also some of the salient points about 2025 and how that would affect a lot of people.
By the way, you're right. She did not make the connect. Other than saying that's his platform, she did not make the connections we talked about a minute ago. When she was talking about a national abortion ban and that, trust me, he would sign it, did she do that as referencing Project 2025? I can't recall, or if it was
I'm
separate
not sure
from it. But
I'm not sure. Sorry.
Joanne, the only argument I guess might be made is in that same poll that I mentioned a minute ago, where a large majority of the American people, I should have said this, are familiar or say they know of Project 2025. A large majority of that majority thinks negatively about it. So possibly she felt it wasn't necessary. The fact is already established. But we take your point, and thank you very much for making it. 877-301-8970.
Besides all the social stuff involving abortion, they want to get rid of Head Start. I mean, Head Start is a great program for young kids to be able to go to school who come from low-income families. It makes a big difference. All the studies that talk about how getting a quality preschool education really matters in terms of your ability to succeed in school, how wealthy parents are able to give those opportunities to their kids, and people that are low-income or not. Why get rid of Head Start? I mean, it just seems so
because it
bizarre.
doesn't help your core contributors? Is that maybe who?
I don't know. I don't know.
You've talked a lot about her performance on the abortion issue last night, which I think was
I thought that
brilliant.
was your finest hour.
Do you remember when he was avoiding the question after Lindsay Davis listed all of his flips and flops on being the best person for reproductive freedom, saying the 6-week limit in Florida was far too brief, and then saying the next day that he would support the ballot question that oppose the ballot question that would change it. Do you remember what he immediately pivoted to in the middle of the abortion back and forth?
What?
Student loans.
Oh, student loans.
And he started.
Yeah, that was so
it was like,
weird.
What are we talking about? And then for a huge period of his 2 minutes on abortion, he talked about the struggles. And the thing I don't understand, how is that a winning proposition for the person who supports, as Trump does, the Supreme Court's position that any attempt to alleviate student loan burden, which, by the way, coincidentally is among the major work done by people like Elizabeth Warren and Ayanna Pressley. How does that help Donald Trump to say good for the Supreme Court, and it's great that Biden's effort to relieve the burden was undone?
I don't know, but that was right before she was talking about how he goes at these rallies and talks about Hannibal Lecter and people being windmills cause cancer. She didn't mention it, the talk about his fixation with whether you'd rather die by electrocution or get eaten by a shark. And that was the student loan stuff was right before that. And then, of course, we went into eating the dogs and the cats.
So let's stay on the crowds, because that was another great baiting moment. Here's Harris talking about crowd sizes, and then Donald Trump, of course, taking the bait.
And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you.
She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
In the history of politics. Are you aware of that, Marjorie?
Yeah, it's always like everybody's never seen before. This is going to happen like no one's ever seen before. This is going to be the biggest, the best. I mean, he's got a big thing about superlatives, Jim. That's a big...
It's also his best ever debate performance, he said, after last night.
And you know what I loved about the abortion thing, too? Because I think many people, religious people, are very concerned about abortion. And out, you don't have to abandon your faith.
I thought that was great, too. I'm so glad you said that.
To not want the government and Donald Trump being the person making those decisions for you. Because I think millions of people feel extremely uncomfortable with the idea of abortion. It's tough. But I thought that was a great point that she made.
I did, too. Let's go to Peter and JP. Jamaica Plain, hi. Quickly, Peter, because the Congresswoman is about to call in. Peter, quickly. I think that's going well. Peter, 3 strikes and you're out. Peter, you want to say something or no? Apparently not. Peter, sorry. Thank you. What, Marjorie?
A texter points out that Harris is getting criticized for lack of detail, and those are legitimate points. But when Trump was
not on the economy. When she, other than failing, which she did at the top, and to answer directly the question of are people better off financially than they were 4 years ago, she then proceeded to bullet a whole bunch of programs, concrete programs that would help people's economic situation.
But the texter's making the point that there was not detail and all. I mean, she evaded some of the questions is what this person is saying. But this texter points out that Trump was calling for the deportation of up to 1 million I think 11 million immigrants.
11 million.
Yes, and he was asked about how exactly that was going to happen. How is that going to be carried out? And he never answered that one.
No, he did not. Lindsay Davis said, or David Muir, are you going to go door to door? And he never answered the question. I believe she is ready. Yes, she is. Joining us now is United States Representative Ayanna Pressley, calling in with her reaction, not just to last night, but what happens after. And by the way, what has stuck with me is Sue O'Connell was with us in the 11 o'clock hour, and her quote was, did you ever imagine a time when Dick Cheney and Ayanna Pressley would vote for the same person for president? Congresswoman Pressley, you're in pretty good company. Welcome to the show.
Oh, it's good to be with you, especially on this day.
Yeah, well, so what'd you think, Congresswoman? What'd you think of last night?
Well, my granddaddy would have called that a mollywhopping. I had this fear going into it that the two of them being on stage together would in some way sort of sane wash Trump, but that did not happen. No. He was his usual, delusional, evading, trafficking conspiracy theories, and really just showed what a volatile person he is and why he is unfit to lead. He cannot lead this country through conflict. And Kamala, by contrast, and I do want to just say this, policy is my love language. I certainly care about policy, and we can enumerate those policies which will build that more just and inclusive America that Kamala Harris proved she's not only prepared for that debate stage, she's prepared to lead this country. She was confident. She was commanding. She had a strength of conviction. She was prepared. I mean, no one should be surprised by how compelling and unflappable she was in defense of reproductive freedoms and abortion access. She's been doing that work and telling that story since she was a United States Senator, long before Roe was overturned. But what I would say is that as important as policy is, what people need to know in this moment is that you see them, that you will center them, you will advance policies that are responsive to their needs to lighten their load and their everyday struggles, but also meet them at their aspirations. And she did that skillfully. It was a masterclass. And she showed character. And that's what people care about in this moment, character, and they want to feel confident in your ability to lead, especially to lead us during challenging times and conflict.
You know, Congresswoman, I said at the top of the show, and I believe, obviously, it was a dominating performance. And I said at the top, I thought even more dominating than what happened with the debate with Joe Biden, because it was really all about Biden's failure there and not Trump's brilliance. However, she didn't directly answer a question at the top on the top issue in the minds of voters across the country on the economy. She followed it with some good detail. She didn't directly respond to criticism around changing positions on issues not just fracking. And by the way, I know he's done much more flip-flopping than she has. Don't you think in the remaining 50-some days that those vulnerabilities on issues that matter a hell of a lot to voters in most key states, she's got to address more directly than she has?
But we're still very much in a campaign.
Yeah.
You know, we're still making a case to the electorate, taking nothing for granted, and still building this coalition. Again, a new electoral map has emerged in real time. Different states are in play. And so we still have a story to tell, and we still have a campaign to run. I mean, I'm very confident coming out of this debate, but this is still a statistical dead heat. As damning a commentary that is, and as incredulous as I am that is the case. But Kamala Harris last night met the moment. Well, she exceeded it, actually. And on those issues that are top of mind for everyday people, whether you're talking about reproductive freedom, birth control, contraceptives, IVF, mifepristone, whether you're talking about lowering the cost of prescription drugs, of child care, you know, those issues that keep everyday people up at night, Kamala Harris sees them. Donald Trump is completely disconnected. He's not only a callous individual, he is a clueless one. And when he said that he's never read Project 2025, these failed attempts to try to distance himself from Project 2025. If he hasn't read it, that's because I don't think he's much of a reader, period. But the fact remains that that was written by his allies for a Trump White House to advance Trump's agenda in partnership with a weaponized Trump Supreme Court to cause harm to everyone who calls this country home. Ticket. J.D. Vance said that school shootings are just a way of life. Oh. Donald Trump said we need to just get over it. That's not the America that I know that anyone wants to live in, where that is the sort of thing that we normalize and that we accept.
You know, Congresswoman, we were joking, some of us were joking last night, and some of the texters were talking about this today, feeling a real estrogen surge during the course of the debate last night because of her domination of Donald Trump. But it just wasn't an estrogen surge. You're a black woman. She's a black woman. He has a real problem, it seems to me, whether it's talking about Fani Willis, the DA down in Georgia, or Letitia James, the AG in New York, or Rachel Scott, that was the ABC moderator at the National Association of Black Journalists. He called her a nasty woman. I'm surprised he didn't call Harris a nasty woman.
So was I.
Or Lindsay Davis last night, another woman of color. There's something to me rather delicious about the fact that it wasn't just a woman, but a woman of color who just, I think, humiliated him last night. Are you taking any particular joy in this?
Well, yes. Oops. He is a misogynist. He is a racist. And last night, he was a mollywop by his biggest fear, and that is an educated black woman who was unflappable.
That's right.
Had a strength of conviction. She is qualified. She has the expertise to lead this country, and the compassion as well. And she demonstrated that.
You know, I'm sure I'm going to regret this, Congresswoman, but I have to say I'm unfamiliar with the term mollywop. Is that what it is?
I don't know, Jim, maybe I'm showing my age a little bit, or actually just my upbringing with my grandfather. But it just means, she cleaned his clock. Essentially, that's what it means.
I love
to be
it.
Mollywopped.
Mollywopped.
Mollywopped. Yeah.
You have my commitment. In the next two shows, I will use the term in a sentence here, Congresswoman, as we're talking about. After the debate, it's surprising to me at least, the Vice President said she would like one additional debate with Donald Trump. I believe this morning he said it's unlikely. How are you struck by that? Do you think that's a good idea?
Absolutely. I mean, I think as much as we can continue to have the two of them head-to-head, reminding people of just how stark the contrast is here, and also how high the stakes are. I'm not surprised that Trump is running for the hills. I mean, did you see him on that stage? He was like a deflating balloon, a petulant liar, a petulant lying child, trafficking in hate and lies and conspiracy theories. Just more of the same from him. While Kamala Harris was up there, confident, commanding, she prepared. Commander-in-Chief that actually prepares not only for a debate but to lead this country. But she didn't just start preparing once she was at the top of the ticket. The work, like I said, that she's been doing on reproductive freedom, the work to support our small businesses, work around voting rights and housing justice. The kids would say she's not new to this, she's true to this. So I'm not surprised that he's running for the hills, but I welcome any opportunity for them to share a stage because Kamala Harris has a clear vision for a more just and inclusive country. She wants to be a president for everyone who calls this country home. And I think that will be very clear to people the more they see them side by side. One
last thing from me, Congresswoman. I share most of your perspectives on Donald Trump, and you haven't mentioned in the last 5 minutes that he's an insurrectionist, a felon, civilly found liable to be a rapist, essentially, a grifter, a business fraud leader, etc. Despite all that, and despite the fact that Harris has run practically a perfect campaign for, a month leading up to, even without last night's debate. And not only is it a dead heat nationally, but it's a dead heat in the three critical Rust Belt states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, despite those two things. Why? Why is this tie, if there's such a gap in your estimation between the quality of both candidates?
Well, we still have work to do, and we still have a story to tell. But I know that Kamala Harris understands struggle, and she also wants to harness people's aspirations and meet those wherever you live in this country. That she wants your humanity and your dignity to be centered, whatever your family model, whatever kind of worker you are. So I know that we can build the winning coalition necessary. We just have to get out there and tell that story and do the work. And I'll say one thing especially that I've found has been resonant with folks the more we talk about Project 2025, aside from dismantling the Department of Education and a national ban on abortion and all of those things, but the fact that they want to gut unions. I mean, that is a working family's middle issue. The fact that they want to eliminate the right to organize, eliminate card checks, eliminate overtime pay, those things that matter because we're still in a fight, to see wages increase here. So that is something that's resonant with people wherever they live. And I found that to be true when I was on the ground in Pennsylvania. I found it to be true when I've engaged voters in Alabama. I found that to be true when I've engaged voters in New Hampshire. Now, I'll be getting back on the road in short order, and if you'll let me, I'll call in from the road and share some more of what I'm seeing and hearing anecdotally.
We'd love that, actually.
We would love it.
You know, before you go, as a constituent, I'm hoping you can do me a personal favor, Congresswoman Presley, and I am a constituent. Next time you walk by Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz on the floor of the House of Representatives, would you mollywalk him for me or no?
No.
I mean, no. Congresswoman, the connection's horrible. We got to let you go. Thank you much for sharing your perspective. And we'd love you to call us from the road. Please take that seriously. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Congresswoman
Ayanna Presley.
Thank you very, very much, Congresswoman Ayanna Presley. Just joined us, of course. Okay, we are done, I believe. No Jared today.
How you feeling about no Jared? But before we have a minute before you have to thank everybody, we've talked about this for 3 hours. It was a rather incredible night last night.
24 hours ago, I was absolutely a basket case. I was afraid that this would be a disaster. I was just afraid because he's made mincemeat of people in previous debates, and she got him. She got him. And Matt Gaetz, that little squirmy guy, he's one of the people that did the supposed debate prep with him. He did a hell of a job. And Tulsi Gabbard, you haven't seen her in a while, they really did a great job. I would say the two of them. He maybe get somebody else if he dares do another debate.
I don't think, but you don't think the issue
afraid.
is how he's prepared. He does whatever the hell he wants to do, and it doesn't matter, don't you think?
I don't know, but he really got clobbered. That would be. How about you, Jim? You want to say something final before we go?
The only final thing I'd say is I hope you get rid of COVID as quickly